name is Nia, and at 32 years old, I had spent the last 5 years of my life feeling like an imposter in the world of Atlanta's black elite. To the outside world, the Brooks family was the epitome of success and grace. My father-in-law, Bishop Franklin, was the charismatic leader of New Zion Cathedral, a megachurch that boasted 10,000 members and a television broadcast that reached millions. My mother-in-law, Beatrice, was the first lady of the church, a woman who wore designer hats that cost more than most people's cars and whose smile could freeze water. Then there was my husband, Marcus. To the public, he was the brilliant tech entrepreneur, the golden son destined to bring the family empire into the digital age. And then there was me, Nia, the freelance blogger. That was how Beatrice introduced me to her high society friends. She would say it with a little pause and a pitying smile. "This is Marcus' wife Nia," she blogs. In their eyes, I was the charity case. The girl with no pedigree, no connections, and no real job who had somehow tricked their prince into marriage. They had no idea who I really was. They did not know that my freelance blogging was a cover for my actual career as a high-level crisis management consultant and ghostwriter for Silicon Valley billionaires. They did not know that I had a net worth that rivaled the bishop's. I had kept it a secret because I wanted to be loved for myself, not my bank account. I wanted a family, not a business transaction. But as I stood in the ballroom of the Brooks family estate that Saturday afternoon, surrounded by crystal chandeliers and 500 of the most judgmental people in Georgia, I was beginning to realize that love was the one thing this family could not afford. The theme of the party was diamonds and legacy. The ballroom floor was marble, the flowers were imported white orchids, and the champagne was flowing like water. I stood by the dessert table trying to make myself as small as possible. I was wearing a simple cream dress I had bought off the rack for $80. It was elegant, but compared to the custom couture gowns around me, I looked like a pauper. Beatrice held court in the center of the room, looking magnificent and terrifying in a gold sequined gown. She clapped her hands, and the music died down. It was time for the presentation of gifts. In this circle, gifts were not just gestures of affection, they were public declarations of power and status. First up was Chloe, my sister-in-law. Chloe was the definition of a golden child, spoiled, beautiful, and utterly ruthless. She walked arm in arm with her husband, Kyle. Kyle was white and came from old money in Connecticut. Beatrice loved him. She loved his pedigree, she loved his connections, and most of all, she loved his money. Kyle stepped forward and handed the bishop a set of keys. A hush fell over the crowd as the double doors opened and a valet drove a gleaming vintage Mercedes convertible onto the patio, visible through the glass walls. It was a masterpiece of a car, pristine and black, worth easily $120,000. The room erupted in applause. Bishop Franklin embraced Kyle like the son he never had. Beatrice wiped a theatrical tear from her eye. "Look at that," she boomed, her voice projected by the microphone. "Now that is a gift befitting a man of God. Kyle and Chloe, you have outdone yourselves. This is what Black excellence partnering with generational wealth looks like." My stomach churned. I clutched the small rectangular package in my hands. It felt lighter than air, and suddenly incredibly foolish. Marcus nudged me, his hand gripping my elbow a little too tightly. "Go on, Naya," he hissed. "It is our turn. Do not embarrass me." We walked up to the small stage. The spotlight hit us, and I felt the heat of 500 pairs of eyes assessing me, judging my dress, calculating my worth. Marcus flashed his winning smile, the one that had charmed investors and church elders alike. "Happy birthday, Dad," Marcus said, his voice smooth as silk. Nia and I put a lot of thought into this. He gestured for me to hand over the gift. I stepped forward, my hands trembling slightly. Beatrice was standing right next to the bishop, her eyes fixed on the package in my hands like a hawk spotting a field mouse. The bishop unwrapped it. It was a leather-bound photo book. I had spent 6 months curating it. I had tracked down old photos of his grandmother, found letters he had written in seminary, and restored damaged pictures of the first tiny church he had started in a garage 30 years ago. It was a labor of love, a tribute to his history. The bishop opened it, thumbing through the pages. For a second, I saw a flicker of genuine emotion in his eyes. But then Beatrice laughed. It was a short, sharp sound that cut through the room. "Oh, bless her heart," Beatrice said, leaning into the microphone so the entire room could hear. "A scrapbook. How quaint." The crowd rippled with polite, confused laughter. Beatrice turned to the crowd, flashing a smile that showed too many teeth. "You all must forgive Nia. She has so much free time on her hands since she is currently between opportunities. It is sweet, really. It is the best she could do with her limited resources." The humiliation washed over me like ice water. She had just announced to the entire congregation and half the city council that I was unemployed and broke. She had taken a gift meant to be sentimental and turned it into a punchline about my poverty. I looked at Marcus, waiting for him to step in, waiting for him to say that I worked hard, that the gift was meaningful. Instead, he laughed. He actually chuckled along with the crowd. He put an arm around his mother and said, "Well, you know Nia, Mom, she loves her arts and crafts." My heart shattered. Arts and crafts. That was what he called it. The bishop handed the book to an assistant without looking at it again, turning his attention back to the Mercedes outside. Beatrice dismissed us with a wave of her manicured hand. "Thank you, Nia," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Why do not you make yourself useful, dear? The servers are a little overwhelmed with the champagne toast. Why do not you grab a tray and help circulate the drinks? Family pitches in, right?" I stood there frozen. She was asking her son's wife to work as a server at her own father-in-law's birthday party. Marcus nudged me again. "Just do it, Nia," he whispered. "Do not make a scene. Mom is stressed. Just help out for 20 minutes. I looked at him, really looked at him. He was wearing a $3,000 suit that I had paid for out of my secret account, though he thought it came from his startup capital. He looked handsome and weak. I swallowed my pride. I told myself it was for peace. I told myself I could survive this. I nodded stiffly and walked toward the catering station. I picked up a tray of crystal flutes filled with vintage champagne. The tray was heavy, my hands were shaking. I moved through the crowd, offering drinks to people who looked through me as if I were invisible. I heard snippets of conversation as I passed. "Can you believe Marcus married her? I heard she has zero ambition, just sits at home writing a blog nobody reads. Beatrice is a saint for putting up with it. At least Chloe married well. Kyle is a catch." I kept my head down, focusing on not dropping the tray. I just wanted this night to be over. I wanted to go home, take off this cheap dress, and disappear. I was making my way toward the VIP section where the church elders were seated when I saw Chloe heading straight for me. She was laughing, holding a large glass of red wine in one hand and gesturing wildly with the other. She saw me. I know she saw me. We made eye contact from 10 feet away. She did not slow down. She did not change course. She walked straight into my path. "Oops," she squealed as she collided with my shoulder. The impact was not hard, but it was calculated. Her glass tipped. A wave of dark crimson liquid launched from her glass and splashed directly onto the front of my cream dress. The cold, wet sensation hit my skin instantly. The tray of champagne in my hands wobbled dangerously, but I managed to keep it steady. The room went silent. I looked down. My dress was ruined. A massive, jagged red stain covered my chest and stomach, looking like a fresh wound. Chloe brought a hand to her mouth in a mock gesture of shock. "Oh my God, Nia," she said, her voice loud and shrill. "You are so clumsy. Look what you made me do." "I made you do," I started to say, but the words caught in my throat. "That was a 1982 Petrus." Chloe continued shaking her head. "That glass of wine cost $500. That is probably more than your entire outfit is worth." Beatrice appeared out of nowhere, swooping in like a bird of prey. "What happened?" "Oh, good Lord, look at this mess." Nia walked into me. Mom. Chloe whined. She was not watching where she was going with that tray. Beatrice looked at me with pure disgust. Really, Nia? First the cheap scrapbook, now this. You are ruining the aesthetic of the party. You smell like a winery. I looked around the room. Hundreds of people were staring. Some were snickering. Others looked pitying. But no one moved to help. I looked for Marcus. He was standing by the bar talking to a tall, stunning woman in a red dress. He glanced over, saw the commotion, saw his wife covered in wine and being berated by his mother and sister. He turned his back. He took a sip of his drink and turned his back on me. That was the moment. That was the exact second the last thread of hope snapped. Get her out of here! Beatrice snapped at one of the catering staff. Get her a towel or something and get her out of the main hall. She is an embarrassment. I did not wait to be escorted. I placed the tray of champagne on the nearest table with a definitive clatter. I am going to the restroom. I said, my voice trembling but audible. I turned and walked away. I held my head high even as the wine seeped through to my underwear, even as I heard Chloe giggling behind me. I walked out of the ballroom and down the long corridor toward the guest restrooms. My hands were balled into fists. I was not crying. I was past crying. I was vibrating with a cold, hard rage. I reached the restroom and locked the door. I grabbed paper towels and tried to blot the stain, but it was useless. The dress was destroyed. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked pathetic. A woman in a stained, cheap dress who had let herself be treated like a servant and a punching bag for 5 years. No more, I whispered to my reflection. I washed my face. I slicked back my hair. I took a deep breath. I decided I would leave. I would call an Uber, go home, pack a bag and go to a hotel. I would figure out the rest later. I opened the bathroom door and stepped back into the hallway. The party was still roaring in the distance. I needed my purse, which I had left on a side table near the entrance of the ballroom before I started my shift as a waitress. I walked quietly, trying to avoid being seen. I grabbed my purse. I was turning toward the front door when a shadow fell over me. Mrs. Nia. I jumped. It was Mr. Henderson, the head of security for the estate. He was a large man, an ex-police officer who had worked for the bishop for a decade. He had always been kind to me. Once when his wife was sick and they were struggling with medical bills, I had anonymously paid off their balance at the hospital using my secret funds. He never knew it was me, but he had always treated me with a respect the rest of the family lacked. Mr. Henderson, I said, clutching my purse to my stained dress. I was just leaving. He did not move out of my way. His face was grim. His earpiece blinked in the dim light of the hallway. You cannot leave yet, Mrs. Nia, he said. Please, Mr. Henderson, I said, feeling the tears finally threatening to spill. I cannot stay here. Look at me. He looked at the wine stain, but his expression did not change. I see it, ma'am. And I saw what Miss Chloe did. That is not why I stopped you. He took a step closer, lowering his voice to a rumble. You need to come with me to the surveillance room. Right now. Why, I asked, confused. Because there was a meeting in the bishop's study about an hour before the party started, he said. The cameras were rolling. The audio was on. He looked over his shoulder toward the ballroom where my husband and his family were celebrating their wealth and power. You need to see what they said about you, he whispered. You need to see it before you sign whatever papers Mr. Marcus is planning to give you on Monday morning. Papers. What papers? I asked, my blood running cold. Mr. Henderson gestured toward the heavy oak door that led to the security wing. Come with me, Mrs. Nia. What you are about to see will completely change how you see your husband. And if you walk out that door now without knowing this, they are going to destroy you. I hesitated for only a second. Then I nodded. Lead the way, I said. I followed him into the darkness of the house, leaving the party and the noise behind. I did not know it yet, but the Nia who walked into that security room would not be the same Nia who walked out. The victim was about to die, and the owner of the debt was about to rise. At my father-in-law's 60th birthday party, I went back inside the main house to retrieve my purse that I had forgotten on the side table. That is when a heavy hand landed on my shoulder. I turned around expecting to be scolded by my mother-in-law for being in the wrong room, but instead, I found Mr. Henderson, the head of security, standing there with a look of terrifying seriousness on his face. He looked left then right, ensuring the hallway was empty before he leaned in and whispered, "Mrs. Nia, you need to come with me to the surveillance room right now. What you are about to see will completely change how you see your husband and this entire family." I followed him, my heart pounding against my ribs, not knowing that the video playing on his monitors would shatter my life and simultaneously hand me the keys to my freedom. The security room hummed with the low drone of cooling fans and the static of handheld radios. It was a cold, sterile space filled with glowing monitors that captured every corner of the Brooks estate. It was a stark contrast to the perfumed air and clinking glasses of the ballroom I had just fled. Mr. Henderson locked the heavy steel door behind us, and the sound of the party vanished completely, replaced by an oppressive silence that felt heavy with secrets. I hugged my arms around my chest, trying to cover the red wine stain that marked me like a target. My hands were still trembling, not from the air conditioning, but from a mixture of humiliation and a creeping dread that something far worse was waiting for me on those monitors. "Sit down, Mrs. Nia," Mr. Henderson said, gesturing to a worn leather chair in front of the main console. "You are going to want to be sitting for this." I sat on the edge of the chair, my eyes scanning the wall of screens. I saw the ballroom from high angles, the guests looking like ants in their expensive finery. I saw the kitchen staff frantically plating hors d'oeuvres. I saw the front gates where valets were parking cars worth more than my life earnings. Mr. Henderson typed a command into the keyboard. He pulled up a recorded file time-stamped 1 hour ago. "This was recorded in the bishop's private study," he said, his voice low and grave. "It happened just before the guests arrived, while you were helping the catering staff set up the tables." On the center screen, high-definition footage began to play. I saw my husband Marcus. He was pacing back and forth across the Persian rug, a glass of amber scotch in his hand. He looked agitated, sweating slightly despite the climate control. Sitting on the leather sofa were his mother Beatrice and his sister Chloe. They looked relaxed, bored, even as if they were discussing a dinner menu rather than the destruction of a human being. I turned up the audio knob. Marcus' voice filled the small room, tinny but crystal clear. "We are out of time, Mom," he was saying, his voice pitching up in panic. "The investors are pulling out. The audit is scheduled for next week. If I do not come up with $2.5 million by Tuesday morning, the whole thing collapses. They will see the books. They will see there is no tech, there is no algorithm. It is just a shell company moving money around. It is a Ponzi scheme, Mom, and the bottom is falling out." Beatrice took a slow sip of her drink, calmly adjusting the diamond brooch on her lapel. "Calm down, Marcus," she said, her voice smooth and chilling. "You are sweating in a $3,000 suit. It is unbecoming. We have a plan. We always have a plan. That is why we married you to her." I gasped, covering my mouth with my hand as the words hit me. "Married you to her." I watched as Marcus stopped pacing and turned to his mother with a look of pure disdain. "She is broke, Mom," he spat out. "You saw her dress today. She is a freelance blogger. She barely makes enough to buy groceries. She has nothing liquid I can use. I have drained the joint savings account already to pay the lease on the office space, so it looks legitimate. There is nothing left to take." Beatrice laughed, a dry, humorless sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. "You are looking at the small picture, son. She has credit. Perfect, untouched credit. And more importantly, she has that house in D.C. My blood ran cold. The house my parents had left me. It was a modest property in a gentrifying neighborhood in Washington, D.C. that I had rented out for years. It was the only thing I had left of them. It was my safety net, my retirement plan, the one thing I had kept separate from Marcus because he had always dismissed it as a rundown shack. "The deed is in her name," Marcus argued on the screen. "She will never sign it over. She is obsessed with that place. She wants to keep it for our future children." He mocked the words future children, making a gagging motion that made my stomach lurch. She thinks we are actually trying to conceive. Chloe chimed in from the corner, examining her manicure as if the conversation bored her. So make her sign it. You are her husband. She is stupid in love with you. Just tell her it is for insurance or tax purposes. She literally signs whatever you put in front of her because she trusts you. She is a sheep, Marcus. Shear her. Marcus shook his head, his face twisting in frustration. Not this time. It is a second mortgage, a home equity line of credit for $500,000. The bank requires a notary. She has to know what she is signing. It is too big to hide in a stack of insurance papers. Then he smiled. It was a smile I had fallen in love with, a smile that I now saw was nothing but a predator baring its teeth. But do not worry, he said, walking over to the desk and picking up a thick stack of documents. I have it figured out. I need the money Monday morning to pay off the bridge loan. I already have the papers drawn up. I forged her signature on the preliminary application last week. I stared at the screen, horror rising in my throat like bile. He had forged my signature. He had committed a felony while I was sleeping in our bed, trusting him, loving him. But the notary, Beatrice asked. How will you get past the notary requirements? Marcus laughed and took a long drink of scotch. Uncle Silas is the notary. He owes Dad a favor for bearing that harassment suit last year. He will stamp whatever I give him. But that is not the best part. He leaned in closer to his mother and sister, his face glowing with a sick excitement. Once the loan funds on Monday afternoon, once the money is in my offshore account, we do not need her anymore. She becomes a liability. If she finds out about the loan, she could go to the police. She could freeze the accounts. So we initiate Phase 2. Phase 2? Chloe asked, looking up with genuine interest for the first time. What is Phase 2? Marcus set his glass down on the antique desk. We declare her incompetent. I have already been seeding the ground for months, telling everyone she is depressed, paranoid, hearing things. I told Dr. Jenkins that she has been violent at home. On Monday evening, after the bank transfer clears, I am calling Dr. Jenkins. He has agreed to sign the committal papers. We are going to have her admitted to St. Jude Mental Health Facility for a 72-hour hold. The room spun. St. Jude was a nightmare of a facility, a place known for patient abuse and indefinite holds. It was a place where people disappeared. He was going to lock me away. He was going to steal my house, ruin my credit, and throw me into a cell to rot so I could not fight back. And then Marcus said, beaming with pride, I will use the medical reports to file for an emergency conservatorship. I will have total control over her assets. I will divorce her on the grounds of insanity. And by the time she gets out, if she ever gets out, I will be married to Vanessa. Her father's polling numbers are up. Being the son-in-law of a senator will fix all our credibility problems with the investors. Beatrice nodded approvingly, as if he had just described a smart business merger rather than the destruction of his wife. Vanessa is a good match. She comes from good stock. Just make sure it is clean, Marcus. I do not want any crying scenes at the church. Do it quietly. Tarnish her reputation so no one believes her, then lock her away. It is the only way to protect the legacy. The video ended. The screen went black, reflecting my own face back at me. I looked pale, ghostly. My eyes were wide and dark. I felt a violent lurch in my stomach. The champagne, the humiliation, the betrayal, it all rose up at once. I barely made it to the small trash can in the corner of the room before I retched. I fell to my knees, my expensive purse sliding to the floor. I vomited until there was nothing left, until my throat burned and my eyes streamed. I was heaving, trying to expel the poison of their words from my system. Mr. Henderson stood by, silently handing me a box of tissues when I was done. He did not offer empty platitudes. He did not tell me it would be okay. He knew better. He knew that the life I thought I had was dead. I wiped my mouth and stood up. My legs felt shaky, but I forced them to hold my weight. I walked to the small sink in the corner of the room and rinsed my face. The cold water shocked my skin. I looked into the mirror above the sink. The woman looking back at me was not the same woman who had entered the room. The softness was gone. The hope was gone. The love for Marcus, the desperate need for his family approval, it had all been vomited into that trash can. In its place was something cold, hard, and incredibly sharp. I turned to Mr. Henderson. "Can I have a copy of that video?" He nodded, pulling a small USB drive from his pocket. "I made you 2 copies, Mrs. Nia. One for you and one I have already sent to a secure cloud server that only you can access. I also have the audio from the ballroom when Miss Chloe spilled the wine. It was not an accident. She planned it with your mother-in-law to make you look unstable before the guests." I took the drive, my fingers closing around the cold metal. It felt heavy. It felt like ammunition. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Why are you doing this? You work for them. You risk your pension." He looked at the screen where the frozen image of the bishop's study remained. "I work for the church, Mom. And what they are doing in there, that is not God. That is the devil. And I remember who paid for my wife's surgery 3 years ago when the insurance denied us. I saw the transfer came from a shell company, but I traced the IP address. I never forgot." I nodded, understanding for the first time that my kindness had not been wasted. It had been an investment, and it was paying out now when I needed it most. They thought I was weak. They thought I was poor. They thought I was alone. I checked my phone. I had 5 missed calls from Marcus, probably wondering where his servant had gone, probably needing me to fetch more wine for the guests he planned to rob. I did not call him back. Instead, I opened a secure messaging app, one that I used for my high-profile clients, the billionaires and politicians who paid me millions to fix their disasters and hide their secrets. I scrolled past the contacts for senators and tech moguls until I found a number saved simply as the cleaner. I typed a message, my thumbs moving with steady precision. The text was short, but it carried the weight of a nuclear warhead. I typed, "Activate Protocol Phoenix. Target Marcus Brooks. Assets compromised. Immediate freeze on all accounts. Begin forensic audit. Timeline 48 hours. Burn it all down." I hit send. I watched the delivery receipt turn into a red receipt. Then I picked up my purse, smoothed down my wine-stained dress, and walked out of the security room. I had a role to play. I had to be the loving victim, the stupid wife, the sacrificial lamb for just 24 more hours. Marcus wanted to send me to an asylum. He had no idea that he had just declared war on the one person who knew exactly how to destroy him. He thought I was a blogger. He was about to find out I was the author of his destruction. I left the estate through the service entrance, my hands still shaking as I gripped the steering wheel of my 7-year-old Honda Civic. The car was another part of my disguise. To the Brooks family, it was proof of my poverty. To me, it was just a car, reliable and invisible. As I pulled out onto the dark highway, the headlights cutting through the Georgia night, I dialed a number I had not used in months. The phone rang once. "Yes," the voice on the other end answered. No pleasantries, no wasted words. It was Mr. Sterling, my personal attorney, and the only person in Atlanta who knew that the broke blogger Nia Brooks was actually the owner of Phoenix Holdings, a consultancy firm with assets that dwarfed the Brooks family fortune. "Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice tight. "We have a situation. I just activated Protocol Phoenix. Did you get the alert?" "I did," Mr. Sterling replied, his tone shifting to professional urgency. "I have already started the preliminary freeze on your personal assets to protect them. But Nia, we have a bigger problem. My team just flagged a suspicious activity alert on your credit report. It came through 20 minutes ago." I gripped the wheel tighter. "What kind of activity?" "A loan application," Mr. Sterling said. "A home equity line of credit for $500,000 secured against your property in D.C. It was submitted to First Atlanta Bank 3 days ago. The preliminary approval just came through. They are waiting for final signatures on Monday morning." I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. Marcus had said he forged my signature on the application. He was not just talking. He had actually done it. How did they get past the initial verification, I asked. "They need my signature. They need my consent." "They have your signature," Nia, Mr. Sterling said quietly. Or at least a very good copy of it. The digital submission has a signature that matches yours perfectly. It looks like someone traced it from an old document. And the notary stamp on the preliminary forms belongs to a Silas Jenkins. Does that name sound familiar? Uncle Silas, I whispered. He was a deacon at the church and a close friend of the bishop. Of course he was in on it. If we do not stop this by Monday morning at 9 a.m., the funds will be wired, Mr. Sterling continued. And since it is a joint account they set up in your name, Marcus will have immediate access to transfer it out. Once it hits an offshore account, it is gone, Nia. And you will be left with the debt and a lien on your parents' house. Stop it, I said, my voice hard. Block it. Flag it as fraud. Call the bank president at home if you have to. You have my power of attorney. Do whatever it takes. I can stop the transfer, Mr. Sterling assured me. But Nia, you need to get out of there. If they are willing to commit bank fraud and forgery, they are dangerous. You are not safe in that house. I know, I said, watching the city lights blur past. But I cannot leave yet. Not tonight. I need evidence. The video is good, but it is not enough to put them away for good. I need his laptop. I need the financial records, the emails, the communication with Vanessa. I need to bury them, Mr. Sterling. I need to make sure they never do this to anyone else. Be careful, Nia, Mr. Sterling warned. If he suspects you know, if he thinks for 1 second the jig is up, he could get violent. Desperate men do desperate things. I hung up as I turned onto our street. The house was dark, except for a single light in the master bedroom. My heart hammered against my ribs. I was walking into the lion's den, and I was armed only with a USB drive and my own rage. I pulled into the driveway and sat for a moment staring at the house. It was a beautiful modern home in Buckhead, bought with Marcus money, or so he claimed. In reality, the down payment had come from a loan I had secretly co-signed through a shell company because his credit was shot. I essentially owned the mortgage on my own prison. I took a deep breath, smoothed my features into a mask of exhaustion and defeat, and opened the car door. I had to play the part. I had to be the broken wife, the humiliated woman who had run away crying. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the silence. I kicked off my heels, leaving them by the door, and walked slowly up the stairs. The bedroom door was ajar. I pushed it open. Marcus was in bed. He was lying on his side, breathing in a steady rhythm that suggested deep sleep, but I knew better. I saw the slight tension in his jaw, the way his hand was curled into a fist under the pillow. He was awake, waiting to see what I would do. I moved quietly to the bathroom, stripped off the ruined dress, and threw it in the hamper. I washed the makeup from my face, staring at my reflection. You can do this, I told myself. You survive this night, you win the war. I put on an old, oversized t-shirt and climbed into bed, staying as far away from him as possible on the king-sized mattress. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to his fake breathing, counting the seconds. After about 20 minutes, he shifted. He rolled over his arm, flopping heavily across my waist. It took everything in me not to recoil, not to scream. Nia, he mumbled, his voice thick with feigned sleepiness. You home. Yes, I whispered, making my voice tremble. I am home. He pulled me closer, nuzzling his face into my neck. I am sorry about tonight, babe, he murmured. Mom was out of line. Chloe too. I will talk to them. Liar. Liar, liar. It is okay, I said, forcing a sob into my voice. I was just embarrassed, Marcus. I felt so out of place. I know, he soothed, stroking my hair. But you are home now. You are safe. Go to sleep. Everything will be better on Monday. Monday, the day he planned to destroy me. I lay still, waiting. I waited until his breathing changed, until the rhythm became deep and regular, until a soft snore escaped his lips. I waited another hour just to be sure. Then I moved. I slid out from under his arm, moving with the slow, deliberate caution of a bomb disposal expert. I crept out of the room, my bare feet silent on the plush carpet. I went downstairs to his home office. The door was locked. Of course it was. Marcus was paranoid about his privacy, claiming his work was top-secret proprietary tech. I knew now it was just to hide his fraud. I did not have a key, but I did not need one. I pulled a bobby pin from my hair. I had learned how to pick locks years ago, a skill I picked up during a research phase for a crime novel I was ghostwriting. It was surprisingly easy, especially on cheap interior locks. Click. The door swung open. I slipped inside and closed the door behind me, not daring to turn on the light. I used the flashlight on my phone, keeping the beam low. I went straight to his desk. His laptop was there, a sleek silver machine. I opened it. Password protected. I tried his birthday. Incorrect. I tried his mother's birthday. Incorrect. I tried the date he founded his company. Incorrect. Then I remembered the video. Vanessa. He was obsessed with her. He saw her as his ticket to legitimacy. I typed in Vanessa. Incorrect. I tried Vanessa 123. Incorrect. I paused, thinking. What was the date they met? I did not know, but I knew her birthday because he had sent her flowers on that date last year, claiming they were for a client. July 4th. I typed V July 04. The screen flashed and unlocked. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. I inserted the USB drive Mr. Sterling had given me months ago for secure data transfers. I started copying everything. While the progress bar crawled across the screen, I opened his email. My eyes widened as I scrolled. It was worse than I thought. There were emails to offshore banks setting up accounts in the Cayman Islands. There were emails to a falsified document service requesting a template for a power of attorney. And there were emails to Vanessa, dozens of them. Baby, just hold on a little longer, he wrote in one dated 3 days ago. The cow is almost milked. Monday is the big day. Once I have the cash and she is locked up in the loony bin, we are free. I have already picked out the ring. It is going to look so good on you. I scrolled further. I found a folder labeled Expenses. I opened it and felt sick. He had been using our joint savings, the money I had contributed from my blogging earnings, to pay for his life with her. Item: Four Seasons Hotel Suite, $3,000. Item: Cartier bracelet, $5,000. Item: Private jet charter to Miami, $12,000. He had spent nearly $50,000 of my money on her in the last 6 months. Money I had saved for a rainy day. Money I thought we were saving for a baby. The copy finished. I pulled out the USB drive and shoved it into my bra. I shut down the laptop and wiped the keyboard with the hem of my shirt to remove any fingerprints. I locked the office door behind me and crept back upstairs. Marcus was still asleep. I climbed back into bed, my heart racing so fast I thought it might wake him up. I lay there clutching the cold plastic drive against my skin, plotting my next move. Morning came too soon. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, hitting my face like an interrogation lamp. I woke up to the smell of coffee and bacon. Marcus walked into the bedroom holding a tray. He was wearing a fresh shirt, his hair perfectly styled, a smile plastered on his face. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, setting the tray down on the bedside table. "I made you breakfast. I thought you deserved a little pampering after yesterday." I sat up, feigning grogginess. "Marcus, this is sweet." He sat on the edge of the bed, handing me a cup of coffee. "Listen, babe, I have been thinking. You seem really stressed lately. Yesterday at the party you seemed off, unstable. Here it comes. The setup." "I was just upset, Marcus," I said, taking a sip of the coffee. "Your mother humiliated me. I know, he said, putting a hand on my knee, "and that is not okay. But your reaction, running away, disappearing for hours, it has me worried, Nia. I think you are burned out. You have been working so hard on that blog, and I do not think you are sleeping well." I looked at him into his lying eyes. "What are you saying?" "I made an appointment for us," he said, his voice dripping with fake concern. "With Dr. Jenkins. He is a specialist, just for a checkup, just to talk. Maybe he can give you something to help you sleep, to help you calm down." Dr. Jenkins. The man he had bribed to commit me. I do not need a doctor. Marcus, I said, putting the coffee down. I am fine. Please, Nia, he said, his grip on my knee tightening just a fraction. Do it for me. I am worried about you. I love you, and I want you to be healthy. We can go this morning, grab a nice brunch afterwards. Just a quick visit. I looked at the clock. It was Sunday. Most doctors' offices were closed, but Dr. Jenkins was a concierge doctor, a man who catered to the whims of the wealthy for a price. I realized then that I had no choice. If I refused, he would get suspicious. He might try to force me. Or worse, he might accelerate the timeline. I needed to play along. I needed to walk into the trap so I could spring it on my own terms. Okay, I said, forcing a weak smile. If it will make you feel better. I will go. Good, he said, leaning in to kiss my forehead. His lips felt like a brand. Get dressed, babe. Wear something nice. We want to make a good impression. I got out of bed, my legs feeling heavy. I walked to the closet, picking out a simple blue dress. As I zipped it up, I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked scared. I looked vulnerable. I looked exactly like the victim he wanted me to be. But inside, a fire was burning. I touched the spot where the USB drive was hidden, now safely tucked into my purse. Let's go see the Dr. Marcus, I whispered to my reflection. But you are not going to like the diagnosis. The private practice of Dr. Jenkins was located in a discreet, ivy-covered brick building in Buckhead, far away from the prying eyes of the general public. It was the kind of place where the waiting room smelled of expensive leather and old money, and where the receptionists signed non-disclosure agreements before they signed their employment contracts. Marcus held my hand as we walked in. To anyone watching, he looked like the devoted husband guiding his fragile wife. To me, his grip felt like a shackle. His fingers dug into my palm with a pressure that was just on the edge of painful, a silent warning to behave. I was wearing the blue dress he had picked out. I had kept my makeup minimal to enhance the look of exhaustion and vulnerability. I needed to look the part. I needed them to believe I was breaking so they would get sloppy. We were ushered into Dr. Jenkins' office, immediately bypassing the empty waiting room. The office was dimly lit with heavy mahogany furniture and shelves lined with medical textbooks that looked like they had never been opened. Dr. Jenkins sat behind his massive desk. He was a small man with a thin mustache and eyes that darted around the room, never settling on anything for too long. He stood up as we entered, smoothing down his silk tie. "Marcus, good to see you," he said, shaking my husband's hand. "And this must be Nia." I sat in the chair opposite him, folding my hands in my lap. I tried to make myself look small. "Hello, Dr. Jenkins," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He did not smile. He opened a file on his desk and clicked a gold pen. "Marcus has been telling me some concerning things about your behavior lately, Nia. He says you have been acting erratic, paranoid, that you are having trouble distinguishing reality from fantasy." I looked at Marcus. He was wearing his mask of concern, his brow furrowed in fake worry. "I am just worried about her, Doc," Marcus said, squeezing my shoulder. "She has been saying things that do not make sense, accusing my family of things. And the mood swings, they are terrifying." Dr. Jenkins nodded, scribbling on his notepad. He looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "Nia, have you been hearing voices? Voices that tell you people are plotting against you?" I shook my head. "No, I do not hear voices." "Are you sure?" He pressed, his tone condescending. "Sometimes the voices can sound like your own thoughts. Marcus says you accused his mother of stealing from you. That sounds like a persecution complex." "She did," I started to say, but Marcus squeezed my shoulder hard. His thumb dug into my collarbone, sending a sharp bolt of pain down my arm. "See," Marcus said, cutting me off. "She gets agitated so quickly." Dr. Jenkins made another note. "Agitation, paranoia. What about the violence, Nia?" I blinked. "Violence. Marcus told me about the vase you threw yesterday," Dr. Jenkins said. "He said you smashed it against the wall because you thought there were cameras inside it." I stared at them. There was no vase. I had never thrown anything in my life. They were building a narrative brick by lie by brick. I never threw a vase, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Marcus, you know that never happened. Marcus looked at the doctor with a sad resignation. She does not remember, he said softly. That is what scares me the most. She blacks out. She goes into these rages and then she forgets. Dr. Jenkins nodded gravely. Dissociative episodes. This is more serious than we thought. He leaned forward, looking deep into my eyes. Nia, I want to help you, but you have to be honest with us. Do you feel safe in your own mind right now? I felt a trap closing around me. If I said yes, I was in denial. If I said no, I was admitting to insanity. I feel tired, I said truthfully. I just feel very tired. Of course you are, Dr. Jenkins said. Your brain is working overtime trying to process these delusions. It is exhausting. He turned to Marcus. I think we need to be aggressive here, Marcus. If she is violent, if she is dissociating, she is a danger to herself and others. We need to stabilize her immediately. I felt panic rising in my throat. Real panic this time, not feigned. They were moving too fast. I think I'm going to be sick, I said, standing up abruptly. Sit down, Nia, Marcus commanded, his voice dropping an octave. I put a hand to my mouth. Please, I need the restroom. Marcus hesitated, but Dr. Jenkins pointed to a door in the corner of the office. Through there. I rushed into the small private bathroom and locked the door behind me. I turned on the faucet, letting the water run loudly. Then I pressed my ear against the wood of the door. I needed to hear what they were saying when I was not in the room. I pulled my phone from my pocket and hit record, hoping the sound of the water would mask my movements but not their voices. She is worse than I described, Marcus said, his voice completely changing. The worry was gone, replaced by cold impatience. She is fighting it. She is lucid, Jenkins replied. That is a problem. If she speaks to anyone outside this room, she sounds rational. We need her sedated, Marcus. Heavily. That is the plan, Marcus said. I need her out of it for the next 48 hours. The notary is coming tomorrow morning at 9. I need her pliable enough to hold a pen, but out of it enough not to read what she is signing. I held my breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. I will write you a script for haloperidol and a high-dose benzodiazepine, Jenkins said. It is a cocktail we use for acute psychosis. It will knock her out cold. When she wakes up, she will be foggy, confused, compliant. You can tell her it is for anxiety. And after she signs? Marcus asked. After she signs, we admit her, Jenkins said. I will have the papers ready. Involuntary commitment for psychiatric evaluation. With the medication in her system, she will fail the intake exam. She will look drugged and unstable. It will be an easy sell to the review board. Once she is in St. Jude, we can keep her there for weeks, maybe months. Long enough for you to handle your business. Perfect, Marcus said. Just make sure the dosage is high. I do not want her waking up in the middle of the night. Do not worry. Jenkins laughed, a dry, scratching sound. This would knock out a horse. Just get it into her. Can you handle that? She trusts me, Marcus said. Or at least she pretends to. I will make sure she takes it. I stopped the recording. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. They were not just going to commit me. They were going to drug me into submission. They were going to chemically lobotomize me just long enough to steal my inheritance and my name. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked terrified. Good. Use it. I flushed the toilet and splashed cold water on my face. I unlocked the door and stepped back into the office. I am sorry, I whispered, wiping my face with a tissue. I just felt so dizzy. It is okay, darling, Marcus said, standing up and coming over to me. He wrapped an arm around my waist. Dr. Jenkins has a solution. He is going to give us some medicine to help you rest. It will make the dizziness go away. It will make everything go away. Thank you, I said, looking at the floor. Dr. Jenkins handed Marcus a small white paper bag. 2 pills every 4 hours, he instructed. Start immediately. We walked out of the office, Marcus' arm heavy around me. He thanked the doctor and led me to the car. The drive home was silent. I stared out the window watching the city pass by, wondering if this was the last time I would see the sky as a free woman. When we got home, the house felt like a tomb. The air was still and stifled. Marcus led me straight to the kitchen. "Sit down," he said, pointing to a stool at the island. I sat. He went to the fridge and poured a glass of water. Then he opened the white bag and shook 2 large blue pills into his hand. "Here," he said, holding them out to me. "Dr. Jenkins said these will help you relax." I looked at the pills. I knew what they were. Chemical handcuffs. "I do not want to take them, Marcus," I said, my voice trembling. "I do not like pills. Can I just have some tea?" "Take the pills, Nia," he said, his voice hardening. "Do not be difficult." "They make me feel groggy," I argued. "Please, Marcus, I just want to sleep naturally." "You are not sleeping naturally," he snapped. "You are pacing, you are mumbling, you are scaring me. Take the damn pills." He pressed them into my hand. His skin was hot, his eyes were cold. I held them, looking for a way out. I could fake swallowing them, but he was watching me like a hawk. "Now, Nia," he commanded. I lifted my hand to my mouth. As I did, I purposefully let my elbow jerk. My hand hit the glass of water on the counter. The glass shattered. Water splashed everywhere, soaking the pills in my hand and washing them onto the floor into a puddle of glass and liquid. "Oh no," I cried, jumping back. "I am so clumsy. I am sorry, Marcus." For a second there was silence. Then Marcus' face twisted into a mask of pure fury. "You clumsy bitch," he shouted. He lunged at me. Before I could move, his hand connected with the side of my face. The slap was loud, sharp, and shocking. The force of it knocked me off the stool. I hit the floor hard, my hip colliding with the cabinets. My cheek burned like fire. I tasted blood in my mouth where my tooth had cut my lip. I lay there on the kitchen floor, stunned. Marcus stood over me, breathing hard. His hands were clenched into fists. "Look what you made me do," he hissed. "Look at this mess." "Pick them up," he screamed, pointing at the dissolving blue pills in the water. "Pick them up and eat them off the floor if you have to. You are taking that medicine, Nia. I am not losing everything because you cannot hold a glass of water." He grabbed my arm and yanked me up. His fingers dug into my flesh, bruising deep. He dragged me toward the sink. "I have more," he snarled, reaching for the bag on the counter. "Open your mouth." I clamped my lips shut, struggling against his grip. "Open it," he yelled, squeezing my jaw. Suddenly the front door opened. The sound of heels clicking on the hardwood floor echoed through the house. Marcus froze. He did not let go of me, but he looked toward the hallway. Beatrice walked into the kitchen. She was wearing a pristine white suit and a matching hat, ready for a church luncheon. She took in the scene instantly. The shattered glass. The water. Me, held in Marcus, gripped my face red and swelling, her son radiating violence. She did not gasp. She did not rush to help me. She did not scold her son for hitting a woman. She walked over to the counter and picked up the bag of pills. She looked at them, then at Marcus, then at me. "You are making a mess, Marcus," she said calmly. "Mom, she would not take them." Marcus panted. "She threw them on the floor." Beatrice looked at me. Her eyes were devoid of any sympathy. She looked at the red mark blooming on my cheek. "She needs to be ready for tomorrow," she said. "The notary will be here at 9. She cannot have a black eye, Marcus. It will look bad." She turned to her son and smoothed his collar. "Control yourself," she said. "If you are going to discipline your wife, do it where it does not show. Do not leave a bruise before the anniversary celebration. We have guests coming." She looked back at me, lying on the floor, holding my face. "Get her cleaned up," Beatrice ordered. "And get those pills down her throat. Use a crusher if you have to. Put it in her food. Just get it done." She checked her watch. "I have to go. The committee is waiting. Fix this, Marcus, or I will fix it for you." She turned and walked out, leaving the scent of expensive perfume and rot in the air. Marcus looked down at me. The rage had drained out of him, replaced by a cold, mechanical determination. "You heard her," he said. He let go of my arm and walked to the drawer, pulling out a mortar and pestle. "Get up," he said. "We are going to try this again. And this time you are going to swallow." I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. I tasted the blood in my mouth. I looked at the man I had married, the man grinding pills into powder to poison me. "Okay, Marcus," I whispered, lowering my head in submission. "Okay, I will take them." He smiled. It was the smile of a man who thought he had won. "Good girl," he said. He did not know that the slap had not broken me, it had woken me up. He did not know that the recording on my phone was still running. And he did not know that while he was mixing the powder into yogurt, I was already planning exactly how I would feed him his own destruction. The Oaks Country Club was a fortress of silence and exclusivity, nestled in the rolling hills just outside the city limits. It was the kind of place where memberships were inherited, not bought, and where the grass was manicured with scissors. I pulled my Honda into the guest lot, feeling the throbbing ache in my cheek where Marcus had struck me. I had covered the bruise with heavy concealer and put on oversized sunglasses, but the pain was a constant reminder of the clock ticking down. I had feigned swallowing the pills, spat them into a tissue when Marcus turned his back, and waited until he passed out from his own exhaustion before slipping away. I had 2 hours before he woke up. 2 hours to turn his biggest ally into his executioner. I found Kyle on the back nine, sitting alone at a patio table overlooking the 18th hole. He was nursing a gin and tonic, his golf clubs leaning against the railing. Kyle was the anomaly in the Brooks family. He was white, he came from old Connecticut money, and he genuinely seemed to love Chloe despite her vanity and cruelty. To the Brooks family, he was a trophy, a symbol that they had arrived. To Beatrice, he was a walking ATM. I walked across the grass, my heels sinking slightly into the turf. Kyle looked up as I approached, his expression shifting from boredom to annoyance. He took a sip of his drink and sighed loudly, not bothering to stand. "Nia," he said, his voice flat. "If Marcus sent you here to ask for another bridge loan, the answer is no. I told him last week I am tapped out until the trust dividends clear next quarter. Go home." I did not stop walking until I was standing directly over him, blocking his view of the sun. "I am not here for Marcus," I said, my voice low and steady. "And I am certainly not here for your money. I have plenty of my own." Kyle laughed, a short bark of disbelief. "Right, the blog must be booming." "Look, Nia, I am trying to relax. My wife has been spending money like she is printing it in the basement, and your husband calls me 3 times a day begging for capital. I am tired of the Brooks family drama, so please take your little purse and go." I pulled out the chair opposite him and sat down uninvited. I took off my sunglasses, revealing the swollen purple bruise blooming on my cheekbone. Kyle flinched, his eyes widening. "What happened to you?" he asked, his voice losing its edge. "Your brother-in-law happened," I said. "He hit me because I refused to be drugged into a coma so he could steal my inheritance. But that is not why I am here, Kyle. I am here because you and I have something in common." He stared at the bruise, then back at my eyes. "And what is that?" "We are both being bled dry by the people we sleep with." I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I tossed it onto the glass table. It landed with a heavy thud, sliding across the surface until it hit his drink. "Read it," I said. Kyle looked at the envelope, then at me. "What is this?" "It is a forensic accounting of your joint assets," I said. "My team pulled it this morning. You think you are tapped out because the market is down, or because Chloe likes designer shoes? You are wrong. You are tapped out because your wife is a thief." He reached for the envelope, his hand hesitating. "Do not be ridiculous. Chloe spends a lot, yes, but she would never steal. It is our money." "Is it?" I asked. "Open it, Kyle. Look at page 4. Look at the transfers labeled Interior Design Consulting." He opened the envelope. He pulled out the stack of spreadsheets I had compiled with the help of my forensic accountant. I watched his eyes scan the rows of numbers. I watched the color drain from his face as he realized what he was looking at. $450,000, I said, saying the number slowly, so it would sink in. That is how much has disappeared from your trust fund in the last 8 months. It did not go to decorators. It did not go to charity. I leaned forward, pointing at the destination routing numbers. It went to a shell company called Titan Ventures. Do you know who owns Titan Ventures, Kyle? He shook his head, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Marcus owns it, I said. Chloe has been funneling your money to her brother to cover his gambling debts and to keep his fake startup afloat. She is not just spending your money, Kyle. She is laundering it for him. Kyle flipped through the pages faster now, his breathing becoming shallow. He pulled out his phone, logging into his banking app. I watched his thumb tremble as he navigated through the screens. He stopped. He stared at the screen. It is gone, he whispered. The emergency reserve. The investment account. It is all gone. He looked up at me, and for the first time I saw the heartbreak behind the arrogance. She told me that money was for the house renovation. She said she was handling the contractors. There are no contractors, I said gently. There is just a black hole named Marcus, and Chloe is feeding him everything you have. She does not respect you, Kyle. She laughs about you. I heard her on the security tapes. She calls you her golden goose. She said you are too stupid to check the statements because you are so desperate for her approval. Kyle dropped the phone onto the table. The screen cracked. He put his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. I loved her, he said, his voice muffled. I gave her everything. I paid off her student loans. I bought her father that car. I sponsored the church jubilee. Why would she do this to me? Because that is what they do, I said, my voice hardening. They find people who have light, and they consume them. They did it to me. They are doing it to you. The only difference is that I am done being food. The question is, are you? Kyle lifted his head. His eyes were red, his face pale. What do you want, Nia? You did not come here just to tell me my marriage is a lie. You want something. I do, I admitted. I am going to destroy them, Kyle. I am going to take everything they have. The money, the reputation, the church. I am going to leave them with nothing but the clothes on their backs. But I need one last piece of the puzzle. Kyle wiped his face with a linen napkin, regaining a shred of his composure. What piece? The black ledger, I said. Kyle froze. He looked around the patio, paranoia suddenly seizing him. How do you know about the ledger? Marcus mentioned it. I lied smoothly. He said the bishop keeps a record of everything. The real tithes, the kickbacks from the construction contracts, the bribes to the zoning board. He said it is the only thing that keeps the bishop out of prison. Kyle nodded slowly. It exists. I have seen it. Franklin keeps it in a wall safe in the vestry at the church. He showed it to me once when he was drunk, trying to impress me with how much cash flow he really controls. He calls it his insurance policy. I need that book, Kyle, I said. I have evidence of Marcus' fraud. I have evidence of their plot against me. But if I want to take down the bishop, if I want to cut the head off the snake, I need that ledger. It proves he has been embezzling from the congregation for decades. Kyle looked out at the green fairway, his eyes distant. If I get you that book, he said, it destroys the family. It destroys Chloe. She will go down with them. She is already down, I said. She is an accomplice to felony wire fraud, Kyle. When the FBI looks at those transfers, they are going to see her name on the authorization forms, unless you help me. I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. My lawyers are preparing a RICO case. If we file it, everyone involved goes to federal prison, including you, because it is your money funding the operation. But if you turn state's evidence, if you help me get that ledger, I can protect you. I can make sure you are listed as a victim, not a co-conspirator. Kyle looked at me and I saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. He was hurt, yes, but he was also a survivor. He came from old money, and old money knew when to cut losses. He picked up his drink and downed the rest of it in one gulp. The safe combination is his ordination date, he said, his voice devoid of emotion. But you cannot just walk into the vestry. It has biometric locks. Only Franklin and the senior deacons can open it. I smiled, a cold, humorless expression. I do not need to walk in. I have a key to the back door and I know the cleaning schedule. But I need the physical book, Kyle. I need you to get me into the church during the anniversary gala tomorrow. He frowned. The gala. There will be thousands of people there. Security will be everywhere. Exactly, I said. Everyone will be watching the stage. Everyone will be watching Marcus give his speech about family values. The vestry will be empty. And you have a VIP pass. You can go anywhere. I want you to walk me in, I continued. I want you to distract the guard at the hallway. Get me 5 minutes inside that office. That is all I need. Kyle looked at the envelope on the table, the proof of his wife's betrayal. He traced the line of the numbers with his finger. $450,000. She bought Marcus a watch, he said quietly. A Patek Philippe. She gave it to him last week for his birthday. She told me she bought it with her bonus. She does not even have a job. He looked up at me and his eyes were cold stones. I will do it, he said. I will get you into the vestry. But I want one thing in return. Name it, I said. When you burn them down, he said, his voice trembling with rage. I want to be the one who lights the match. I want Chloe to know it was me. I want to see her face when she realizes she stole from the wrong man. Done, I said, extending my hand. He shook it. His grip was firm. We were no longer family. We were co-conspirators in a mutiny. Meet me at the south entrance of the cathedral tomorrow at 6:30, Kyle said, standing up. Wear something expensive. If you look like you belong, no one will question you. I stood up, smoothing my dress. Do not worry, Kyle. By tomorrow night, I will own the place. I walked away, leaving him alone with his empty glass and his ruined marriage. I checked my watch. I had an hour before Marcus woke up. I had to get back. I had to swallow the pills. I had to play the victim for one last night. But as I drove back toward the house, the fear was gone. I was not a prisoner anymore. I was a spy. And I had just recruited the asset that would bring the whole empire crumbling down. The bishop thought he was untouchable. Beatrice thought she was the queen. Marcus thought he was a genius. They had no idea that the girl in the $80 dress was coming for their souls. And I was bringing hell with me. Monday morning arrived with the heavy gray stillness of a storm waiting to break. The air in the house was thick with tension, a suffocating blanket that pressed down on my chest. I sat at the kitchen island wearing a faded bathrobe, my hair deliberately messy, my eyes cast downward. I was playing the role of the medicated wife, the broken woman who had swallowed her pills and her pride. In reality, my mind was razor sharp, analyzing every sound, every movement, every shadow in the room. I had not slept. I had spent the night reviewing the stolen files on the USB drive, memorizing account numbers, and routing codes, building a mental map of my husband's destruction. Marcus walked into the kitchen. He was dressed for war in a navy bespoke suit, his cufflinks gleaming under the recessed lights. He smelled of expensive cologne and nervous sweat. He carried a thick leather portfolio in one hand and a black box cutter in the other. The sight of the blade made my stomach turn. He had been using it to open boxes of campaign materials for the church anniversary, but now he held it with a casual menace that felt entirely intentional. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty," he said, his voice too loud, too cheerful. He set the portfolio down on the granite counter with a heavy thud. He placed the box cutter right next to it, the blade still extended, gleaming silver against the dark stone. I flinched. It was a calculated reaction, but the fear behind it was real. Marcus was desperate. He owed $2.5 million by the end of the business day. If he did not get my signature, he was a dead man walking. And desperate men were dangerous. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, walking over to the coffee maker. I nodded slowly, keeping my movements sluggish. "The pills," I lied. "They make me feel heavy." "Good," He said, his back to me. That means they are working. Dr. Jenkins knows what he is doing. You need rest, Nia. You need to stop thinking so much. He poured a cup of black coffee and brought it to me. Then he opened the leather portfolio. He pulled out a stack of documents, thick and intimidating. He spread them out on the counter, pushing a pen toward my hand. I need you to sign these, babe, he said casually. Just some standard insurance updates. Since the incident with the water damage and your health scare, I want to make sure we are fully covered. Increased liability, catastrophic injury protection, that sort of thing. I looked at the papers. The top sheet was indeed a generic insurance summary, but underneath the edges of the pages were misaligned. I could see the header of the second document peeking out. Durable power of attorney. And beneath that, deed of trust transfer. He was not even trying to hide it well anymore. He assumed I was too drugged to notice. He assumed I was too stupid to care. I picked up the pen, my hand trembling. I did not have to fake the tremor. The adrenaline coursing through my veins made my fingers vibrate. Marcus leaned against the counter, watching me. He picked up the box cutter again, idly sliding the blade in and out. Click, click, click. Click. The sound echoed in the silent kitchen like a ticking bomb. Just sign at the bottom of the tabs, Nia, he said, his eyes fixed on the pen in my hand. Do not worry about reading the fine print. It is all standard legalese. I already reviewed it. I looked at the blade in his hand. Then I looked at his face. His eyes were cold, devoid of any warmth or affection. This was the man I had vowed to love and cherish. This was the man who was currently holding a weapon while trying to steal my life. I lowered the pen to the paper. I knew I had to sign. If I refused, he would get violent. He would force my hand, or he would skip the legalities and go straight to the involuntary commitment. I needed to buy time. I needed him to think he had won so he would lower his guard. But I could not give him what he wanted. Not really. I remembered a conversation with Mr. Sterling, my lawyer, years ago when we set up the Phoenix Holdings accounts. We had established a fail-safe, a specific variance in my signature that would automatically trigger a fraud alert at the bank. A silent alarm woven into the ink. Normally I signed my name with a distinct loop on the N and a sharp underline beneath the surname. Today I let the pen drag. I skipped the loop. I made the underline jagged and broken. To the naked eye it looked like the signature of a tired, sick woman. To the bank's verification software it would look like a forgery. I signed the first page, then the second. I flipped to the power of attorney document. Marcus moved closer, hovering over my shoulder, his breath hot on my neck. Keep going, he whispered. Almost done. I signed. I signed away my rights. I signed away my property. I signed away my voice, or so he thought. As I reached the final page, the deed. Transfer the box cutter stopped clicking. Marcus was holding his breath. This was it. The prize, the house in D.C., the equity he needed to pay off the loan sharks and the fake investors. I hesitated. I let the pen hover over the line. Marcus tapped the blade against the counter. Sharp metal on stone. A clear warning. Sign it, Nia, he said, his voice dropping to a growl. Do not make me ask you again. I let out a whimper, a sound of pure, pathetic weakness. I scribbled my name messy and unrecognizable. I let the pen drop from my fingers as if I had no strength left. There, I whispered. Is that it? Marcus snatched the papers away instantly. He flipped through them, checking the signatures. A look of triumphant greed washed over his face. He did not notice the missing loop. He did not notice the broken line. He only saw the ink. He only saw the money. Perfect, babe, he said, stacking the papers and shoving them back into the portfolio. You did good. You really did good. He zipped the portfolio shut, sealing my fate inside. Or so he believed. Just then his phone rang. It was sitting on the counter screen up. The name, Vanessa, flashed in bright white letters. Marcus froze. He looked at me, then at the phone. He must have been feeling invincible, high on the adrenaline of his victory, because he did something incredibly stupid. He answered it on speakerphone while he was turning away to put the portfolio in his briefcase. "Hey, baby," he said, his voice shifting instantly from threatening to sultry. "I am just wrapping up." Vanessa's voice, shrill and demanding, filled the kitchen. "Did you get it? Did she sign the damn papers?" Marcus glanced at me, his eyes widening slightly, but he did not turn off the speaker. He smirked. "It is done, Ness. I have the documents. The notary is meeting me at the office in 20 minutes. The transfer will be initiated by noon." "Thank God," Vanessa squealed. "I was stressing out. The wedding planner just called. She needs the deposit for the venue today or we lose the date." "And Marcus?" "I just tried on the dress. It is a Vera Wang. It costs $15,000, but it is perfect. You promised me perfect, Marcus." I sat there frozen on the stool, listening to the woman who was helping to destroy my life talk about wedding dresses. $15,000. That was more than Marcus had spent on our entire wedding. He had told me we needed to be frugal to save for the business. "You will get your dress," Vanessa, Marcus said, chuckling. "You will get everything. The money is coming." "And what about her?" Vanessa asked, her voice dripping with venom. "Is she gone yet? Did you call the hospital?" "Not yet," Marcus said, casting a dismissive look in my direction. "I have to wait for the funds to clear, but do not worry. By tonight, she will be in a padded room where she belongs. She is barely conscious now. She does not even know what day it is." I let my head loll forward, staring blankly at the counter, playing the part of the medicated zombie. Inside, my heart was racing so fast I thought it might explode. They were discussing my incarceration like it was a grocery list item. "Get rid of her," Vanessa demanded. "I do not want her around for the gala tomorrow. I want to stand next to you on that stage without wondering if your crazy wife is going to show up." "She won't be there," Marcus promised. "Tomorrow is our night, baby. The church, the money, the future. It is all ours." "I love you. I love you too," Vanessa cooed. "Hurry up. I want to celebrate." Marcus ended the call. He looked at me, his expression one of utter contempt. He did not even bother to make an excuse for the call. He assumed I was too far gone to understand what I had just heard. He assumed I was already a ghost. He picked up the portfolio and the box cutter. He slid the blade back into its casing with a final decisive click. "I have to go to the office," he said, adjusting his tie in the reflection of the microwave. "I have a meeting with the notary. You stay here, Nia. Rest. Do not answer the door. Do not answer the phone. I will be back later to take you to a safe place." He walked over to me and kissed the top of my head. It was the kiss of Judas. "Bye, babe," he said. He walked out of the kitchen, his stride confident and bouncy. I heard the front door open and close. I heard the lock click. I heard his car engine start and fade away down the driveway. I sat there for a long moment in the silence of the kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. Then I slowly lifted my head. The fog in my eyes cleared instantly. The slump in my shoulders vanished. I sat up straight, my spine steel. I looked at the spot where the phone had been. I could still hear Vanessa's voice, shrill and entitled. $15,000 for a dress. A dress she planned to wear to celebrate my destruction. I stood up and walked to the window, watching the empty driveway. A cold smile touched my lips. It was not a smile of happiness. It was a smile of absolute terrifying clarity. "Vera Wang," I whispered to the empty room. I walked over to the coffee maker and poured the rest of the pot down the sink. I rinsed the cup Marcus had given me, washing away the residue of his lies. "It is a beautiful dress, Vanessa," I said, my voice low and steady in the quiet house. "It really is." I turned and walked toward the stairs, my movements precise and purposeful. I had work to do. I had calls to make. I had a fraud alert to confirm, and a meeting with a white boy named Kyle to prepare for. "It is a shame," I finished my thought, my eyes landing on the calendar where the date of the church anniversary gala was circled in red ink. "Because orange jumpsuits are so unflattering." And you are going to be wearing one for a very long time. The new Zion Cathedral was not just a church, it was a fortress of glass and steel, rising from the Atlanta skyline like a monument to God and capitalism. On the night of the 30th anniversary gala, the building was glowing. Searchlights swept the night sky, and a red carpet lined with velvet ropes led up the massive stone steps. Luxury cars lined the block, delivering the city's most powerful bishops, politicians, and business tycoons. Inside, 5,000 souls filled the stadium's seating, and millions more were tuning in via the live global broadcast. It was the biggest night in the history of the Brooks family dynasty. It was a coronation. I arrived in a hired town car, slipping past the valet line unnoticed. I was not wearing the stained cream dress from Saturday or the faded bathrobe from this morning. I was wearing armor. It was a white bespoke pantsuit tailored to within an inch of its life. It cost $5,000, and it fit like a second skin. The fabric was crisp, the lines were sharp, and the color was blindingly bright against the sea of black tuxedos and jewel-toned gowns. I had pulled my hair back into a severe, elegant bun, and my makeup was flawless. I did not look like a broken woman. I looked like a CEO. I looked like Judgment Day. I walked up the side steps toward the VIP entrance where the family was gathering before the processional. The air smelled of expensive perfume and heavy lilies. I checked my phone one last time. A simple text message from Kyle read, "We are green. The tech team is ready." I slipped my phone into my clutch and stepped into the holding area. Beatrice was the first to spot me. She was adjusting Marcus' bow tie, fussing over him like he was a toddler about to take his first steps. When she saw me, her hands froze. Her eyes raked over my white suit, her expression shifting from confusion to cold fury. She marched over to me, her gold gown rustling aggressively. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, grabbing my arm and pulling me into a corner away from the cameras. "Marcus told me you were resting. He said you were medicated." I pulled my arm from her grip with a sharp jerk. "I am feeling much better, Beatrice," I said, my voice calm. "I would not miss the bishop's big night for the world." She narrowed her eyes, scanning my face for signs of the drugs. Finding none, she switched tactics. "You cannot go out there looking like that. You are a distraction. We have senators out there, Nia. We have donors." I smoothed my lapel. "I think I look appropriate for the occasion." Chloe sauntered over, a glass of champagne in her hand. She looked me up and down, a sneer curling her lip. "White, really?" she scoffed. "You look like a ghost. Or like you are going to a funeral." I smiled at her. It was a cold smile that did not reach my eyes. "Interesting choice of words, Chloe." "Maybe I am." Beatrice stepped between us, blocking my path to the main doors. "You are not sitting with the family," she commanded. "I will not have you twitching or acting out on the front row during the broadcast. You will sit in the back, the overflow section, row Z, seat 42, and keep your mouth shut. If you cause a scene, security will remove you before you can say amen." I looked at the heavy wooden doors that led to the sanctuary. I could hear the choir starting the opening hymn, a thunderous gospel anthem that shook the floorboards. "Fine," I said. "The back is fine. I have a better view from there anyway." Beatrice looked suspicious at my easy compliance, but she did not have time to argue. The stage manager was signaling for them to line up. "Get out of my sight," she snapped. I turned and walked away, heading toward the rear entrance of the sanctuary. As I walked, I passed Marcus. He was staring at me, his face pale and sweaty. He looked like he had seen a ghost. He touched his pocket, checking for the phone he thought held his future. He did not know that his future was currently walking toward the sound booth with a USB drive in her pocket. I entered the sanctuary from the rear. The sight was breathtaking. 5,000 people on their feet, hands raised in worship. The choir was robed in gold, swaying in unison. Giant LED screens flanked the pulpit, projecting the image of the bishop to the very back rows. It was a spectacle of faith and finance. I found a spot standing near the sound booth in the shadows. I saw Kyle standing near the tech crew. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. He had done his job. The crew had been paid. The files were loaded. Now we just had to wait for the sermon. The service began with the usual pomp and circumstance. There were songs, there were prayers, there were offerings collected in velvet bags that looked heavy with cash. Then the lights dimmed and a spotlight hit the center stage. Bishop Franklin walked out. The crowd erupted. He waved smiling that benevolent, fatherly smile that had convinced thousands of people to tithe 10% of their income to fund his private jets. My brothers and sisters, he boomed, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. 30 years. 30 years of favor. 30 years of building a legacy for the kingdom. He spoke for 20 minutes about sacrifice, about vision, about the burden of leadership. It was a masterclass in manipulation. He wove scripture with self-aggrandizement, painting himself as a modern-day Moses. And now he said, his voice softening with feigned humility, "I want to introduce you to the future of this house. My son, the fruit of my loins, a young man who has taken the teachings of this church and applied them to the marketplace, a visionary, a God-fearing entrepreneur who is changing the world with technology. Please welcome Marcus Brooks." The applause was deafening. Marcus walked onto the stage. He looked the part perfectly. The successful son, the heir apparent. He hugged his father and wiped a fake tear from his eye. He stood at the podium, gripping the sides as if to steady himself against the wave of adoration. "Thank you," he said, his voice shaking just the right amount. "Thank you, Dad. Thank you, church." He paused, looking down at his feet, then up at the camera. He let the silence stretch, building the tension. "I stand here today blessed," he continued, "blessed by family, blessed by opportunity. But the Bible says that even in our blessings, we must carry our crosses. Here it comes," I thought. "The setup. Many of you know my wife, Nia," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a somber whisper. "You know her as a woman of quiet grace. But what you do not know is that we have been fighting a battle in our home, a battle against the darkness of the mind." A murmur of sympathy rippled through the crowd. Beatrice, sitting in the front row, dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. Chloe looked down solemnly. "Nia has been struggling," Marcus went on. "Recently, her mental health has declined rapidly. She has become confused, paranoid. It breaks my heart to say this, but she is no longer the woman I married. She is sick. And as her husband, it is my burden and my privilege to care for her, even when she does not recognize the help." He looked directly into the camera, his eyes wide and pleading. "I ask you tonight, church, to pray for her. Pray for my wife. Tomorrow I am taking steps to get her the intensive care she needs. It is the hardest decision of my life to send her away, but I have to do it to save her." The crowd swayed. People were crying. They were eating it up. He was painting himself as the suffering saint, the devoted husband forced to institutionalize his crazy wife. He was using their faith to bury me. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. It was sharp and clear like a diamond. He was not just lying. He was stealing my agency, my sanity, and my life in front of 5,000 witnesses. I looked at Kyle. He was watching me, his hand hovering over the control panel. He raised an eyebrow. "Now." I stepped out of the shadows. I did not walk to the back row. I walked to the center aisle. The white suit glowed under the house lights. I walked with a stride that ate up the ground. My heels clicked on the marble floor, a rhythmic sound that cut through the murmurs of the crowd. Heads began to turn. People whispered, pointing. "Who is that? Is that her?" I kept walking. I did not look left or right. I looked straight ahead at the stage where my husband stood peddling his lies. Marcus saw me. His speech faltered. He stopped mid-sentence, his mouth hanging open. He looked from me to his mother in the front row. Beatrice had turned around, her eyes wide with horror. She stood up, waving her hand frantically at security. "Get her out," she mouthed. "Get her out." Two ushers started toward me. They were big men used to handling unruly parishioners. But before they could reach me, Kyle signaled the tech team. Suddenly, the house lights cut out. The sanctuary was plunged into darkness. The only light came from the massive LED screens behind the pulpit. The ushers froze, unsure of what was happening. The crowd gasped. In the confusion, I reached the steps of the stage. I walked up them calm and steady. I walked past the bishop who was shouting into a dead microphone. I walked past Beatrice who was clawing at the edge of the stage. I walked right up to Marcus. He backed away from me, tripping over his own feet. Nia, he whispered, his voice trembling, not with sorrow, but with terror. What are you doing? You are supposed to be asleep. I reached out and took the microphone from the podium. It was dead cut by the booth, but I did not need his mic. I had my own. I pulled a wireless lavalier mic from my pocket, clipped it to my lapel, and tapped it twice. Thump, thump. The sound boomed through the stadium speakers loud and clear. Kyle had routed my frequency through the main system, overriding everything else. The crowd went silent. 5,000 people holding their breath. Marcus tried to grab the mic from me, but I stepped back. "Do not touch me," I said. My voice was amplified, filling every corner of the room. "Do not ever touch me again." I turned to the audience. I looked into the camera, the red light blinking, broadcasting my face to the world. "My husband asked you to pray for me," I said, my voice steady and cold. "He told you I am sick. He told you I am confused. He told you he is sending me away to save me." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. He lied. A gasp went through the room like a physical wave. Marcus lunged for me. "Cut the feed," he screamed. "Cut the feed!" But the feed did not cut. Kyle and his team had locked the system. "I am not sick," I continued. "I am not paranoid, and I am certainly not confused. I am wide awake, Marcus. And so is everyone else." I raised my hand and snapped my fingers. Behind me, the massive LED screen flickered. The image of the church logo disappeared. In its place, a video file began to play. It was grainy black and white security footage, but the image was unmistakable. It was the bishop's study. It was Marcus holding a glass of scotch. It was Beatrice adjusting her brooch. It was Chloe checking her nails. And the audio was crystal clear. "We declare her incompetent." Marcus' voice boomed through the sanctuary. "I have already been seeding the ground for months. We are going to have her admitted to St. Jude. Once the loan funds on Monday, we do not need her anymore." The crowd screamed. It was a sound of pure shock. I watched Marcus' face as his own voice condemned him. He looked like he was shrinking, physically collapsing under the weight of his own words. I turned back to the audience. "Before you pray for me," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos, "let us see what God sees in the dark. Let us see who Marcus Brooks really is." I pointed to the screen. The video shifted. It showed the timestamp. 1 hour before the party. It showed Marcus laughing about forging my signature. It showed Beatrice calling me a sheep to be sheared. It showed the plan to drug me, to lock me away, to steal my home. Beatrice was screaming now, clawing her way onto the stage. "Turn it off," she shrieked. "It is a fake. It is AI. She is a witch." But no one was listening to her. The truth was 40 feet tall and playing on a loop. I turned to Marcus. He was on his knees, his hands covering his ears as if he could block out the sound of his own destruction. "You wanted to send me to an asylum, Marcus," I said, standing over him like an avenging angel in white. "You wanted to drug me and steal my name." I leaned down close enough so only he could hear me over the roar of the crowd. "You forgot one thing, husband. You forgot to check who owns the security company that installed these cameras." I stood up and looked at the bishop, who was slumped in his chair, clutching his chest. "Phoenix Holdings owns the security company," I announced to the room. "And I own Phoenix Holdings." The silence that followed was absolute. "I am not a blogger," I said. "I am a crisis manager. And Marcus, you are in a crisis that I am not going to fix." I signaled Kyle again. The screen changed. This time it was not a video. It was a spreadsheet, a bank statement, a list of debts. Marcus Brooks, personal debt, $2.5 million. Titan Ventures, Shell Company assets. 0. Bishop Franklin embezzled funds, $800,000. And at the bottom, in bold red letters, current holder of Brooks family debt, Phoenix Holdings. I looked at the crowd. I am not your charity case, I said. I am your landlord. I am your creditor. And as of this morning, I own the mortgage on this church, the mortgage on the estate, and the debt of every person on this stage. I turned to Marcus, who was sobbing on the floor. You wanted a legacy, Marcus. Congratulations. You just made history. I dropped the mic. It hit the floor with a deafening thud. I turned and walked off the stage, my white suit shining in the spotlight. I walked down the center aisle, the crowd parting for me like the Red Sea. No one touched me. No one spoke. They just watched in terrified awe as the woman they had laughed at burned their kingdom to the ground. The massive LED screen behind the pulpit flickered to life. It was 50 feet tall and usually reserved for projecting lyrics to hymns or close-ups of the bishop wiping sweat from his brow during passionate sermons. Now it was projecting a grainy black-and-white nightmare. The image resolved into the sharp high-definition feed from the security camera in the bishop's study. The date stamp in the corner read Saturday, 5 p.m. The silence in the sanctuary was so profound, it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. 5,000 people held their breath as they watched their spiritual leaders sitting around a desk drinking scotch and plotting the destruction of a human life. The audio boomed through the stadium-quality speakers, crisp and undeniable. We declare her incompetent, Marcus' voice echoed off the vaulted ceiling. It sounded distorted and monstrous at this volume. I have already been seeding the ground for months. We are going to have her admitted to St. Jude. A collective gasp ripped through the crowd. It started in the front rows and rolled backward like a tidal wave. People covered their mouths. Mothers covered their children's ears. The image of the pious, devoted husband was shattering in real time, pixel by pixel. I stood center stage, my eyes locked on Marcus. He was shaking his head back and forth, a frantic, jerky motion. No, he mouthed, no, 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 but the video continued relentless. Once the loan funds on Monday, we do not need her anymore, Marcus on the screen said, his face twisted in a sneer that was visible to the very last row of the balcony. She becomes a liability. If she finds out about the loan, she could go to the police. Then Beatrice's voice cut in smooth and chilling. Do it quietly. Tarnish her reputation so no one believes her, then lock her away. It is the only way to protect the legacy. Protect the legacy. The words hung in the air, heavy with irony. She had destroyed the legacy in her attempt to save it. In the front row, Beatrice let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. She clawed at the air as if she could physically pull the words back into her mouth. She looked around wild-eyed, searching for an ally, but the faces staring back at her were filled with revulsion. The deacons, the elders, the senators, wives, they were all recoiling from her as if she were contagious. Then the video shifted. The screen went black for a split second before a new timestamp appeared. Sunday, 9 a.m. The scene was my kitchen. The angle was high and wide, capturing the granite island and the expensive appliances. It showed me sitting on a stool, looking small and terrified. It showed Marcus standing over me. The crowd watched as I knocked the water glass over. They saw the pills scatter. And then they saw it. The slap echoed through the church like a gunshot. On screen, Marcus' hand connected with my face. I fell to the floor. The violence was raw and ugly, stripped of any context or excuse. It was just a man beating his wife. A roar of anger rose from the congregation. Men stood up, their fists clenched. Women cried out. The image of their golden boy, the tech visionary, the future of the church, was replaced by the image of the abuser. Look what you made me do, Marcus screamed on the screen. Pick them up and eat them off the floor if you have to. The video zoomed in digitally, a feature of the high-end system Kyle had installed. It showed Marcus dragging me by the arm. It showed him grinding the pills. And then the door opened. Beatrice walked in. The sanctuary went silent again, waiting to see the mother intervene, waiting to see the First Lady of New Zion enact justice. Instead, they heard her say, "Control yourself. If you are going to discipline your wife, do it where it does not show. Do not leave a bruise before the anniversary celebration." That was the nail in the coffin. That was the moment the pedestal crumbled into dust. The woman who led the women's ministry, who preached about the sanctity of the home and the gentleness of the spirit, was condoning violence to protect a party. Beatrice could not take it anymore. She snapped. She lunged from her seat, moving with a speed that belied her age and her heels. She scrambled up the stairs to the stage, her face contorted into a mask of pure hatred. She was coming for me. She was coming for the microphone. She wanted to silence the truth the only way she knew how, by force. "You witch!" she shrieked, her hands curled into claws. "Turn it off, you ungrateful lying witch!" I did not move. I did not flinch. I watched her come. But she never reached me. A figure stepped out from the shadows of the tech wing. It was Kyle. He moved calmly, deliberately. He stepped into Beatrice's path, blocking her access to me and the podium. He was taller than her, broader, and for the first time since I had known him, he looked dangerous. He caught her wrists in midair. He did not hurt her, but he held her firm, stopping her momentum cold. "Do not touch her," Kyle said. His voice was not amplified, but in the stunned silence of the stage it carried. "Do not you dare touch her." Beatrice struggled against him, her eyes bulging. "Get out of my way, Kyle. This is family business. Help me get this crazy woman off the stage." Kyle pushed her back gently but firmly. He released her wrists and stepped between us, creating a human wall. He reached into his tuxedo pocket and pulled out a microphone of his own. He switched it on. "There is no family business anymore," Beatrice, Kyle announced, his voice booming through the speakers. "There is just crime, and I am done paying for it." He looked out at the crowd, searching for his wife. He found Chloe in the front row. She was frozen pale as a sheet, clutching her purse like a shield. "Chloe," Kyle said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I know about the transfers. I know about Titan Ventures." Chloe stood up, shaking her head. "Kyle, baby, do not do this. Not here. I trusted you." Kyle continued, ignoring her pleas. "I gave you access to everything. My inheritance. My trust. The money my grandfather worked his whole life to build. And you stole it." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the stack of bank statements I had given him on the golf course. He held them up for the cameras to see. $450,000, Kyle shouted. "That is how much my wife stole from our joint accounts. That is how much she funneled into her brother's fake company to pay off his gambling debts." The crowd murmured. $450,000. It was a fortune to most of the people in the room. "You looked me in the eye," Kyle said, tears streaming down his face. "You looked me in the eye and told me we were renovating the kitchen. You told me we were investing in our future, but you were just feeding the parasite." He pointed at Marcus, who was still cowering on the floor. "You stole from me to save him," he said. "And you know what the worst part is, Chloe? You did not even ask. If you had asked, if you had told me you were in trouble, I might have helped. But you stole. You treated me like a bank account, not a husband." Chloe was sobbing now, loud, ugly cries that echoed in the silent hall. "Kyle, please," she wailed. "I was trying to protect the family." "You destroyed the family," Kyle said. "And I want my money back. I want every single cent. I am filing charges, Chloe. Tomorrow morning. You are not my wife anymore. You are a defendant." He threw the papers into the air. They fluttered down like snow, landing on the stage around Marcus and Beatrice. Beatrice stared at the papers, then at Kyle, then at me. Her world was ending. Her son was exposed as an abuser and a fraud. Her daughter was exposed as a thief, and she was exposed as the architect of it all. She turned to the bishop. "Franklin," she screamed, "do something! Stop them! They are ruining us!" The bishop sat in his throne-like chair behind the pulpit. He was clutching his chest, his face gray. He looked small. He looked old. He did not move. He could not move. He knew what was coming next. He knew about the ledger. Marcus suddenly scrambled to his feet. He looked wild. His hair was disheveled, his tie crooked. He looked at the screen where the loop of him slapping me was playing on repeat. He looked at the crowd, 5,000 faces filled with judgment and anger. He rushed toward me. He did not have a weapon, but he had desperation. "Turn it off!" he screamed, his voice breaking into a high-pitched, hysterical shriek. "Turn it off right now!" He pointed a shaking finger at me. "Do not listen to her. She is crazy. She is off her meds. This is all deepfake. It is AI. She created this to hurt me because I wanted a divorce." He looked out at the audience, pleading with them, begging them to believe the lie one last time. "She is holed up in a hotel room right now," he yelled. "She is hallucinating. She thinks she is a spy. She thinks she is rich. Look at her. Look at that suit. Where would she get a suit like that? She is broke. She is a blogger. She stole it. She is sick." He was unraveling. He was gaslighting a room full of people who had seen the evidence with their own eyes. It was pathetic. It was terrifying. "She needs help," he shouted, tears mixing with the sweat on his face. "Please, someone help me restrain her. She is a danger to herself. She is having an episode." I watched him. I stood perfectly still, my hands clasped in front of me. I let him scream. I let him show them exactly who he was. A man who would call his wife crazy to cover his own sins. A man who would deny reality until the bitter end. When he finally stopped panting for breath, his chest heaving, I raised my microphone again. "I am not crazy, Marcus," I said, my voice cool and composed. "And I am not broke." I took a step forward, closing the distance between us. He flinched, expecting a blow, but I did not need to hit him. I had something much heavier than a hand. I signaled to the tech booth. The screen changed again. The video of the abuse vanished. In its place, a spreadsheet appeared. It was a balance sheet. It listed the assets of the new Zion Cathedral, the mortgage on the estate, the construction loans for the new family center, the private jet lease. And next to every single line item in bold red letters was the status default. The crowd squinted, trying to read the numbers. Then the logo appeared at the bottom of the screen. A golden phoenix rising from the ashes. Phoenix Holdings. I looked at Marcus. I looked at Beatrice. I looked at the bishop. "You are right about one thing, Marcus," I said. "I am not a blogger." I paused, letting the anticipation build. "I am the CEO of Phoenix Holdings. I am a crisis management consultant for the Fortune 500. My personal net worth is $25 million. The gasp this time was louder than before. It was a shockwave. And this morning I continued, pointing at the screen. "My company purchased the distressed debt of this church. We bought the mortgage on your parents' estate. We bought the loans you defaulted on for your fake company." I smiled, and it was the smile of the wolf who had finally eaten the sheep. "I am not your wife anymore, Marcus. I am your landlord. I am your banker. And as of this moment, I am foreclosing on everything." The chaos on the stage was absolute and terrifying. Marcus was screaming for security, his voice cracking with the desperation of a man watching his life disintegrate. Beatrice was weeping loud, theatrical sobs that were lost in the roar of the confused congregation. The bishop sat frozen in his chair, a statue of ruin clutching his chest, as if his heart simply could not process the magnitude of his fall. The 5,000 people in the auditorium were on their feet, a sea of noise and flash photography, capturing the collapse of the Brooks dynasty in real time. I stood in the center of the storm, perfectly still. I did not need to shout. I did not need to fight. I had already dropped the bomb now. I just had to watch the dust settle. "Security, remove this woman!" Marcus yelled, pointing a shaking finger at me. "She is trespassing. She is disrupting a religious service. Get her out of here now." 3 uniformed guards stepped forward from the wings. Marcus' face lit up with a flicker of hope. He thought they were coming for me. He thought his authority still held weight in this building. But the guards walked right past me. They walked past Kyle, who was standing with his arms crossed, looking grimly satisfied. They walked straight to Marcus and formed a wall between him and me. "What are you doing?" Marcus shrieked, grabbing the arm of the lead guard. "I said get her out! Do your job!" The guard looked down at Marcus, hand with distaste. "We are doing our job, Mr. Brooks. We are protecting the owner of the property." Marcus blinked. "Owner? What are you talking about? My father owns this church." "Not anymore." I raised my hand, signaling toward the side entrance. The heavy double doors swung open and Mr. Sterling walked in. He was flanked by 2 federal marshals and a team of paralegals carrying bankers' boxes. Mr. Sterling walked with the quiet confidence of a man who knows he holds a royal flush. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than Marcus' car and carried a leather briefcase that contained the death warrant of the New Zion Cathedral. The crowd parted for him, sensing the shift in power. He walked up the stairs to the stage, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. He stopped next to me and placed the briefcase on the pulpit right next to the bishop's Bible. "Who is this?" Beatrice demanded, finding her voice through her tears. "Who are these people?" Mr. Sterling adjusted his glasses and looked at the bishop. "Bishop Franklin," he said, his voice amplified by the microphone I clipped to his lapel. "My name is Arthur Sterling. I am the General Counsel for Phoenix Holdings. I am here to serve you with an order of foreclosure and immediate eviction." The bishop looked up, his eyes glassy. "Foreclosure," he whispered. "That is impossible. We have an arrangement with the bank. We have time." "You had time," Mr. Sterling corrected. "Until this morning. But at 9 a.m. when the markets opened, your creditors sold your distressed debt. All of it. The mortgage on this cathedral, the lien on your estate in Buckhead, the loans for your private jet. They were bundled and sold as a high-risk portfolio." He opened the briefcase and pulled out a document thick with red stamps. "And my client purchased that portfolio," Mr. Sterling said. "Every single cent of debt you owe now belongs to Phoenix Holdings." Marcus laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound. "You are lying. That is $12 million of debt. Who has that kind of money? Certainly not my wife. She buys her clothes at thrift stores." I looked at Marcus. I looked at the man who had mocked my thriftiness, who had belittled my work, who had tried to steal my small rental property because he was too incompetent to make his own money. Mr. Sterling handed a document to Marcus. "Read the transfer wire, Marcus. Read the bottom line." Marcus snatched the paper. His eyes scanned the page. I saw the moment his brain registered the number. $12 million. Paid in full. Cash transfer. He looked up at me and his face was a mask of pure, unadulterated shock, where he whispered, "Where did you get $12 million? "I told you, Marcus," I said, my voice calm and deadly. "I am a crisis management consultant. When billionaires make mistakes, they pay me to fix them, and they pay me very well. I have been saving every dime for 5 years while you were playing CEO with your mother's money." I took a step closer to him. "I bought your debt, Marcus. I bought your father's debt. I own the paper on this building. I own the paper on your house. Technically, I even own the lease on that suit you are wearing because it was paid for with company funds that are now in default." Beatrice stood up, trembling. "You cannot do this. This is a house of God. You cannot evict the Lord." "I am not evicting the Lord, Beatrice," I said. "I am evicting the thieves who have been stealing from his people." I pointed to the screens where the spreadsheet of debts was still glowing red. "You embezzled $800,000 from the building fund to pay for your lifestyle. You took money meant for a new youth center and bought jewelry and cars. That is not God. That is greed. And now the bill is due." Mr. Sterling stepped forward again, addressing the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice booming, "as of this morning, the title to this property has transferred to Phoenix Holdings. The former administration has been relieved of their duties due to gross financial misconduct and breach of contract." He turned to the bishop. "Franklin Brooks, you have been removed as the head of this congregation effective immediately. You have 24 hours to vacate the parsonage." The locks on the administrative offices have already been changed. Federal marshals are currently securing the premises to preserve evidence for the coming criminal investigation. Criminal investigation, Marcus shouted. You cannot arrest us. We have not done anything wrong. Mr. Sterling smiled a thin, shark-like smile. We have the ledger, Marcus. The color drained from the bishop's face. He knew. He knew exactly what was in the black book that Kyle had helped me retrieve from the vestry safe just hours ago. We have the ledger, Mr. Sterling repeated. We have the wire transfers. We have the witness testimony from your brother-in-law regarding the theft of his trust fund. The FBI is waiting backstage. They were just waiting for me to serve the eviction notice first. Marcus looked at Kyle. You, he hissed. You gave them the book. Kyle stepped forward, standing next to me. I gave them the truth, Marcus. Kyle said, his voice steady. You stole from me. You stole from your wife. You stole from these people. Did you really think I was just going to let you get away with it because we shared a holiday dinner? Chloe let out a wail, sinking to her knees. Kyle, please. I did it for the family. You did it for yourself, Kyle said, looking down at his wife with a mixture of pity and disgust. And now you have nothing. I froze our joint accounts this morning, Chloe. The lawyers are filing for divorce as we speak. You are on your own. The stage was a tableau of ruin. The bishop was slumped in defeat. Beatrice was screaming at the heavens. Chloe was weeping on the floor. And Marcus was looking at me with a look of pure hatred. You planned this, he spat. You planned this whole thing. You let me think I was winning. You let me think I was smart. I did not let you think anything, Marcus, I said. You were so blinded by your own arrogance you never bothered to look at who I really was. You saw a quiet girl in a cheap dress, and you thought you saw a victim. You never saw the predator standing right in front of you. I walked over to the pulpit. I ran my hand along the polished wood. It felt solid. It felt like justice. You wanted to commit me, Marcus? I said softly, so only he in the front row could hear. You wanted to drug me and drag me out of my own home. You wanted to lock me in a room and throw away the key so you could steal a house worth $500,000. I laughed, a short, sharp sound. You tried to steal a cottage, Marcus, and because you got greedy, because you tried to take the one thing my parents left me, I took everything your parents built. I gestured around the massive cathedral, the millions of dollars of glass and steel, the empire of influence they had constructed on a foundation of lies. I bought it all, I said. $12 million. It was a bargain, really. The land value alone is worth 15. Marcus stared at me, his eyes bulging. You are going to take my parents' house. You are going to put them on the street. I looked at Beatrice, who was now silent, her face a mask of terror. I looked at the bishop, who could not even meet my eyes. I am not putting them on the street, I said. I am just holding them to the same standard they held me to. I leaned in close to Marcus, my face inches from his. You told me I was a liability, Marcus. You told your mother to do it quietly. You said you needed to protect the legacy. I straightened up and smoothed my white suit. Well, Marcus, I am protecting my legacy now, and my legacy does not include being a victim. I turned to Mr. Sterling. Escort them out. All of them. They are trespassing on private property. Marcus lunged. It was a desperate, animalistic move. He reached for my throat. His hands clawed, his teeth bared. He never made it. The guards were on him in a second. They slammed him to the ground, pinning his arms behind his back. The sound of handcuffs ratcheting shut echoed through the silent church. Get off me! He screamed, struggling against the weight of the officers. She is my wife. She is crazy. Listen to me, she is having a psychotic break. Mr. Sterling looked down at him calmly. Actually, Mr. Brooks, he said, she is your landlord, and you are under arrest for attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit kidnapping and grand larceny. They hauled him up. Marcus looked wild, his hair in his eyes, his expensive suit covered in dust. He looked at me one last time. Why, he croaked. Why did you do this? You could have just left. You could have just divorced me. I looked at him, and for a second I felt a flicker of the love I had once held for him. It was a ghost, a memory of a life that never really existed. I could have, I said. But you did not just want to leave me, Marcus. You wanted to erase me. You wanted to lock me away and steal my voice. I walked over to him until I was standing toe to toe. You wanted to put me in an asylum to steal my parents' house, I said, my voice ringing with finality. I smiled. And it was the smile of a woman who had walked through fire and come out holding a torch. So fair is fair, husband. I decided to take your parents' house instead. I turned my back on him. Take him away, I said to the guards. As they dragged him down the stairs, kicking and screaming, his cries of protest lost in the rising murmur of the crowd, I looked out at the 5,000 faces watching me. I did not see judgment anymore. I saw respect. I saw fear. I looked at Kyle and nodded. He nodded back. I walked to the center of the stage and looked at the camera one last time. Service is dismissed, I said. And then I walked off the stage, leaving the ruins of the Brooks Empire behind me, ready to start the rest of my life. The doors to the sanctuary did not just open. They were breached. The sound was distinct, a heavy thud followed by the sharp click of metal bars engaging. Federal agents swarmed the aisles, moving with a synchronized precision that was terrifying to behold. They were not wearing the standard police uniforms of the local precinct. These men and women wore windbreakers emblazoned with 3 letters that strike fear into the hearts of even the most powerful men in America. FBI. The congregation parted like water. The screaming stopped, replaced by a hush of absolute dread. The only sound was the heavy tread of tactical boots on the marble floor. They were not here for crowd control. They were here for the head of the snake. I watched from the stage as a team of 6 agents ascended the steps. They moved past Marcus, who was already in handcuffs, weeping into the carpet. They moved past Beatrice, who stood frozen like a statue of salt. They headed straight for the throne-like chair behind the pulpit where Bishop Franklin sat clutching his chest. The lead agent, a tall woman with eyes like flint, stopped in front of the bishop. She did not bow. She did not ask for a blessing. She pulled a warrant from her jacket pocket and held it up. Franklin Brooks, she said, her voice projecting clearly without a microphone. You are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, and the embezzlement of charitable funds. The bishop tried to stand. He tried to summon the thunderous authority that had ruled this city for 30 years. You cannot do this, he sputtered, his voice weak and trembling. This is a sanctuary. I am a man of God. You have no jurisdiction here. The agent smiled, a thin, humorless expression. God does not have jurisdiction over the IRS, bishop. And neither do you. She signaled to her team. 2 agents stepped forward and hauled the bishop out of his chair. The sight of the great Franklin Brooks being manhandled like a common criminal sent a shockwave through the room. His velvet vestments bunched up around his arms as they clicked the cuffs onto his wrists. We have the ledger, Franklin, the agent said, leaning in close. We have the black book from the vestry safe. We know about the shell accounts in the Caymans. We know about the $2 million in tithes you diverted to buy your mistress a penthouse in Buckhead. We know everything. The bishop went limp. The fight drained out of him instantly. He looked at Kyle, who was standing next to me, his face grim. The bishop realized then who had betrayed him. The son-in-law he had used for money had become the witness who signed his warrant. As they dragged the bishop down the stairs, a path of ruin in his wake, the crowd began to murmur. The spell was broken. They were not watching a persecution. They were watching a reckoning. I turned my attention back to Marcus. He was being hoisted to his feet by 2 marshals. His expensive suit was covered in dust, his face streaked with tears and snot. He looked at his father being led away in chains and let out a low keen of despair. Marcus Brooks, a marshal said, reading from a laminate card. You are under arrest for bank fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and domestic battery. Marcus looked at me. His eyes were wide, filled with a childlike confusion, as if he could not understand why the world had suddenly stopped obeying his commands. "Nia," he croaked. "Nia, tell them. Tell them it was a mistake. I am your husband." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had plotted to erase me. "You are not my husband, Marcus," I said, my voice calm amidst the chaos. "You are a defendant, and I am the witness who provided the evidence." I pointed to the screen where the spreadsheet of his debts was still glowing red. I gave them the laptop, Marcus. I gave them the emails. I gave them the recording of you forging my signature. I gave them everything. He slumped in the grip of the marshals, his legs giving out. They had to drag him off the stage, his shoes scuffing against the floor, leaving black marks on the pristine white surface. But the destruction was not over. The modern world moves faster than the legal system. My phone vibrated in my hand. Then again. Then a continuous buzz that made my palm numb. I looked down. It was a notification from a news alert app. "Senator daughter breaks engagement amid scandal." I unlocked my phone. The live stream of the service was trending #1 globally. Millions of people had watched Marcus slap me. Millions of people had heard him plot my institutionalization. And one of those people was Vanessa. I tapped the link. Vanessa had not just broken the engagement. She had gone nuclear. There was a video posted to her social media account time-stamped 3 minutes ago. She was sitting in the back of a limousine wearing oversized sunglasses, her face perfectly composed, but her voice trembling with manufactured outrage. "I am horrified by the revelations about Marcus Brooks," she said to the camera. "I had no idea he was married, let alone abusive. I was manipulated and lied to just like his poor wife. I am a victim of a predator. I have terminated our relationship effective immediately, and I am cooperating fully with the authorities. To Nia, I am so sorry. Hatch, stand with Nia." I let out a short, dark laugh. She was good. She was a politician daughter, all right. She saw the ship sinking, and she did not just jump off, she torched it to cover her escape. I held up the phone so the front row could see. I held it up so Beatrice could see. "Look, Beatrice," I said, my voice cutting through her shock. "Your future daughter-in-law just dumped your son on Instagram. She is calling him a predator. She is trending." Beatrice stared at the phone, her eyes unfocused. She looked from the screen to the empty space where her husband and son had stood just moments ago. She looked at the congregation, who were now filming her with their phones, their faces hard and judgmental. She was alone. For the first time in 40 years, the Queen of Atlanta was utterly, completely alone. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Her knees buckled. She swayed, grabbing the podium for support. She looked around the stage, desperate for a lifeline, desperate for anyone who still held power. Her eyes landed on me. I was standing tall in my white suit, the owner of her debt, the owner of her church, the woman who held the keys to her entire existence. I was the only person left standing. Beatrice did not run. She did not scream. She did the only thing a survivor like her knew how to do. She adapted. She let go of the podium. She took a step toward me. Then another. Her face crumbled. The mask of the imperious matriarch fell away, leaving behind an old, frightened woman. She sank to her knees. Right there on the stage in front of 5,000 people and millions of viewers, Beatrice Brooks knelt at my feet. She reached out her manicured hands, trembling, and grabbed the hem of my white trousers. "Nia," she sobbed, her voice cracking. "Nia, baby, please." The crowd went silent again, watching this final act of submission. "I know we have had our differences." Beatrice wept, tears streaming down her face, ruining her heavy makeup. "I know I was hard on you, but I was just trying to push you. I wanted you to be strong." She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "You are family, Nia. You are the only family I have left. I know you have a good heart. I know you are a Christian woman. You cannot let them take me. You cannot let them throw me on the street." She clutched my leg tighter, burying her face against my knee. Mama knows, she said, lapsing into a sickeningly sweet vernacular she never used with me. Mama knows you are the best daughter-in-law I ever had. You are the only one who ever really cared. Chloe is a thief. Marcus is a fool. But you, Nia, you are the rock. She looked up again, hope shining in her wet eyes. Forgive me, baby. Forgive your mother. Let us start over. We can run this church together. You and me. Two strong black women. We can fix this. Just tell the police to stop. Tell them you own the debt and you forgive it. Please, Nia, for God's sake. I looked down at her. I looked at the woman who had laughed when wine was thrown on me. I looked at the woman who had told her son to leave no bruises. I looked at the woman who had planned to lock me in a cage for the rest of my life. She looked pathetic. She looked small. And I felt absolutely nothing. The silence stretched out. The audience waited. They wanted to see if the saint would forgive the sinner. They wanted the redemption arc. I reached down. Beatrice's face lit up. She thought I was going to help her up. She thought I was going to embrace her. I took her hands and peeled them off my suit one by one. I held them for a second, feeling the cold, clammy skin. Then I dropped them. They hit the floor with a soft slap. I took a step back, putting distance between us. I brushed the spot on my leg where she had touched me, as if wiping away dirt. Beatrice stared at her empty hands, then up at me, confusion clouding her eyes. Nia, she whispered. I leaned down, the microphone still clipped to my lapel, picking up every syllable. You are right about one thing, Beatrice. I said, my voice calm and deadly. I am the only one who ever really cared. I cared enough to pay for your security guard's wife's surgery. I cared enough to make your son look like a genius for 5 years. I cared enough to try to be part of this family. I straightened up, towering over her. But you did not want a daughter, Beatrice. You wanted a victim. And now that you are on your knees, you think you can trade places. I signaled to the wings where Mr. Sterling was waiting with a final document. But I do not want your apology, I said. And I do not want your church. Mr. Sterling walked over and handed me a clipboard. I want my house back, I said. I looked at her, huddled on the floor. You have 24 hours to vacate the estate, Beatrice. If you are not out by noon tomorrow, the marshals will remove you. She gasped. You cannot. I have nowhere to go. I looked at her with eyes as dry as a desert. You have a son in prison, I said. Maybe you can visit him. I signed the eviction notice with a flourish. I ripped the copy off the clipboard and let it flutter down to the floor next to her. Get off my stage, I said. And then I turned and walked away, leaving her kneeling in the wreckage of her own making. The fluorescent lights of the precinct holding area hummed with a sound that grated against my nerves, a stark contrast to the perfectly tuned acoustics of the cathedral we had just left. The air here did not smell of expensive lilies and old money. It smelled of floor wax, stale coffee, and the sour metallic tang of fear. I sat on a hard plastic chair, my white suit still pristine despite the chaos, holding a cup of lukewarm water. Mr. Sterling was in with the detectives, finalizing the statements and handing over the hard drives that contained the evidence of the Brooks family's crimes. Across the room, sitting on a metal bench bolted to the floor, was Beatrice. She looked like a wax figure that had been left too close to a fire. Her gold sequined gown was torn at the hem from where she had tripped coming down the church stairs. Her wig, usually glued to perfection, was slightly askew. Her makeup had run, creating black riverbeds of mascara down her cheeks. She was not the Queen of Atlanta anymore. She was just an old woman waiting to find out if she was going to prison. She looked up and saw me. For a moment, I saw a flash of the old fire, the arrogance that had ruled her life for 40 years. But it flickered and died almost instantly, replaced by a desperate, weeping, pathetic hope. Nia! She croaked, her voice hoarse from screaming. Nia! Please! You have to stop this! I stood up and walked over to her. I did not rush. I moved with the slow, deliberate grace of a predator who knows the prey has nowhere to run. I stopped 3 feet away from her, close enough to smell the fear on her, but far enough to keep my suit clean. Stop what, Beatrice? I asked, my voice calm. The law, the consequences, or the truth. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand, a gesture so unrefined I had never thought I would see her do it. They took Marcus to the holding cell, she sobbed. They put him in cuffs, Nia. My boy, he is terrified. He is not built for this. And Franklin. They took his blood pressure medication. You cannot let them do this to us. We are your family. I looked at her. I really looked at her. And as I watched her shoulders shake with sobs, a memory flashed in my mind, vivid and sharp as a knife. I remembered the birthday party. I remembered standing by the dessert table holding that tray of champagne like a servant. I remembered Chloe walking toward me, the malicious glint in her eye. I remembered the cold splash of red wine hitting my chest, ruining the only nice dress I owned. But most of all, I remembered Beatrice. I remembered looking at her, desperate for help, desperate for someone to tell me it was an accident. And I remembered her laughing. It had been a small laugh hidden behind a manicured hand, but I had seen it. I had seen the cruel delight in her eyes as she watched me humiliated. I remembered her telling the staff to get me out of sight because I smelled like a winery. She had not cried for me then. She had not begged for mercy for me. She had enjoyed my pain. She had reveled in it. I let that memory settle over me like a coat of armor. It froze any last drop of pity I might have had in my heart. You are crying, Beatrice. I observed, my tone conversational. It is interesting. I do not remember you crying when your daughter threw wine on me. I do not remember you crying when your son slapped me in the kitchen. I only remember you telling him to make sure he left no marks. Beatrice flinched, as if I had struck her. That was different, she pleaded. We were under pressure. We made mistakes. But we can fix it. I can make it up to you. Make it up to me, I repeated. How? She sat up straighter, clutching her purse. I still have friends. I still have influence. Once this blows over, we can rebuild. You and me. I will introduce you to everyone. I will make sure you are accepted. I will throw you a party, Nia. A real party. Just tell the lawyers to drop the foreclosure. Let us keep the house. It is all we have left. I stared at her in disbelief. Even now, sitting in a police station with her husband and son in cells, she still thought the currency of her world mattered to me. She still thought an introduction to her social club was a prize worth having. She still thought she had something I wanted. I do not want your parties, Beatrice, I said. And I do not want your friends. I bought your friends when I bought your debt. Half the people in your contact list owe money to the bank I now control. They are not calling you anymore. They are calling me. Her face crumpled. But the house, she whispered. My garden. My things. You cannot take my home. Where will I go? I looked at the clock on the wall. It was nearly midnight. I actually have a proposition for you, I said. Her head snapped up, hope rekindling in her eyes. Yes. Anything. Name it. I own the estate now, I said slowly, savoring the words. And it is a big property. 15,000 square feet, 8 bathrooms. It takes a lot of work to maintain a house like that. I paused, watching her face. I am going to need staff, Beatrice. I fired the cleaning crew this morning because I found out you were underpaying them. So I have an opening. Staff? She repeated the word, tasting foreign in her mouth. Yes, I continued. I need a live-in maid, someone to scrub the marble floors, someone to clean the toilets in the guest suites, someone to wash the wine stains out of the carpets. I leaned down, my face inches from hers. You know the house better than anyone. You know where the dust settles. So here's the offer. You can stay in the estate. You can live in the servants' quarters above the garage. I will pay you $10 an hour. $10? She gasped, her eyes bulging. It is a fair wage, I said, shrugging. It is more than you paid the woman who raised your children. And I will be generous. I will let you put all your wages directly toward Marcus' debt. At $10 an hour, if you work 7 days a week, you might be able to pay off the interest on his legal fees in about 300 years. You are joking, she whispered. You are mocking me. I am dead serious. I said, my face stone cold. You wanted to protect the legacy, Beatrice. This is your chance. You can stay and serve the house you love so much. You can scrub the floors you used to walk on in heels. You can serve tea to my guests in the very room where you plotted to lock me away. I straightened up, looking down at her. Those are the terms. Take it or leave it. Beatrice stared at me. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish on dry land. The insult was too great. The fall was too far. Her brain simply could not process a world where Nia the blogger was the mistress and she was the help. Her face went gray. Her eyes rolled back in her head. She let out a soft sigh and slumped sideways onto the metal bench, sliding down until she hit the linoleum floor in a heap of gold sequins and shame. A young officer standing nearby rushed over. "Mom," he shouted, reaching for his radio. "We need a medic in the holding area. Female suspect down." I did not move to help her. I did not check her pulse. I did not call her name. I looked at her crumpled form on the floor. Was she faking it? Maybe. Beatrice was a master of performance. Was it real? Maybe. The shock of losing an empire can stop a heart. It did not matter to me. I stepped over her legs. I walked past the officer who was loosening her collar. I walked past the other people in the waiting area who were staring with wide eyes. Mr. Sterling emerged from the back office holding a thick stack of paperwork. He saw Beatrice on the floor and raised an eyebrow. "Is she okay?" he asked. "She is adjusting to her new reality," I said. "Do you have the papers?" He nodded, handing me a clipboard and a pen. "The eviction order and the writ of possession. Once you sign these, the marshals can execute the removal." I took the clipboard. I looked at the document. It listed the address of the Brooks estate. It listed the names of the occupants to be removed. Franklin Brooks, Beatrice Brooks, Marcus Brooks, Chloe Brooks. I thought about the nursery I had wanted to build in that house. I thought about the family dinners I had cooked there, hoping for a compliment that never came. I thought about the cold, empty feeling of that massive house where love went to die. I uncapped the pen. "How long do they have?" I asked. "Standard procedure is 72 hours, Mr. Sterling said. But given the criminal nature of the forfeiture and the flight risk, we can request an expedited order." "Make it 24, I said. I signed my name. It was not the shaky signature I had given Marcus in the kitchen. It was the bold, sweeping signature of the CEO of Phoenix Holdings. It was the signature of a woman who owned the ground she stood on. I handed the clipboard back. 24 hours, I repeated. I want them out by noon tomorrow. I want their clothes in bags on the curb. I want the locks changed. And Mr. Sterling. Yes, Mrs. Nia. Have the security team sweep the house. I want every picture of them removed. I want every piece of furniture they sat on donated to a shelter. I want the house empty. Understood? I turned and walked toward the exit of the precinct. The automatic doors slid open, revealing the cool night air of Atlanta. Behind me, I heard the medics arriving for Beatrice. I heard the shouting of the officers. I heard the crumbling of the old world. I stepped out onto the sidewalk. My driver was waiting. "Take me to the Four Seasons," I said, getting into the back of the car. "And find me a realtor. I am going to sell a church." The gavel hit the woodblock with a sound that felt like the closing of a heavy book. It took 6 months for the federal case against Marcus to wind its way through the courts, but the verdict was never in doubt. The evidence I had provided was too comprehensive, too damning, and too precise. I sat in the back row of the federal courthouse, watching the man who had tried to steal my life stand before the judge. He looked thinner. His suit did not fit right anymore, and his hair was thinning from stress. When the judge read the sentence, Marcus' knees buckled. 10 years in federal prison for wire fraud, bank fraud, and identity theft. There was no parole in the federal system. He would serve 85% of his time. He would be 45 years old when he saw the outside world again. As the marshals led him away, he turned to look at me. I think he expected to see triumph on my face. Or maybe anger. But I gave him nothing. I just checked my watch, stood up, and walked out of the courtroom. I had a flight to catch. The downfall of the rest of the family was just as swift and absolute. Kyle was ruthless in the divorce proceedings. He had the best lawyers money could buy, and he had the evidence I gave him. Chloe was left with nothing. The prenuptial agreement she had signed, thinking it would never matter, held up in court. She walked away with no alimony, no settlement, and a mountain of legal debt. I heard through the grapevine that she is currently working as a cashier at a discount grocery store in Decatur. The golden child who used to mock my clothes now wears a polyester vest and scans coupons for a living. I imagine she thinks about that glass of wine she threw at me every time she clocks in. Beatrice fared even worse. Without the church funds, without her husband's income, and without the estate, she was destitute. The community she had ruled over for decades turned their backs on her completely. In the high society of Atlanta, failure is a contagious disease, and no one wanted to catch what Beatrice had. She lives in a weekly rate motel on the outskirts of the city now. It is the kind of place where the carpet smells of stale smoke and the sirens never stop. I heard she tries to organize Bible studies in the lobby, but no one attends. The Queen has no court left. As for the bishop, he took a plea deal to avoid a trial that would have aired even more dirty laundry. He is currently serving 5 years in a minimum security facility. The megachurch is gone. The brand is dead. But the building remained. And that was my final act of business in Atlanta. I did not want the cathedral. I did not want the estate. I did not want anything that carried the taint of the Brooks name. I sold the estate to a developer who plans to bulldoze the mansion and build affordable housing. It seemed fitting. The church, however, I had a special plan for. I sold the mortgage to a national nonprofit organization called Safe Harbor. They specialize in providing shelter counseling and job training for women escaping domestic abuse and financial control. I sold it to them for $1. The paperwork was signed on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 year after I had walked into that security room. I walked through the empty sanctuary one last time with the director of the nonprofit. The pews were gone, replaced by temporary cots and play areas for children. The pulpit where the bishop had preached his lies was being converted into an intake desk. "It is perfect, Mrs. Nia," the director told me, tears in her eyes. "You have no idea how many women this will save." I looked up at the spot where the massive LED screen used to be. It was gone now, leaving just a blank wall. "I have some idea," I said. I left Atlanta that afternoon. I did not look back. I boarded a plane, not a private jet, but a first-class seat on a commercial flight paid for with my own clean money. I landed in New York City as the sun was setting, turning the skyline into a jagged row of gold and steel. I moved into a penthouse on the Upper West Side. It has floor-to-ceiling windows that look out over Central Park. It is quiet. It is secure. And it is mine. My business has only grown. The scandal in Atlanta actually helped my reputation in the underground world of crisis management. My clients know that I am not just a fixer. I am a survivor. I still ghostwrite memoirs for tech moguls and politicians, but now I charge double. And they pay it without blinking. I spend my days writing in my sun-filled office, drinking good coffee, and living a life of absolute freedom. I have no debt. I have no master. I have no one telling me I am unworthy. Tonight, I am sitting on my velvet sofa, watching the city lights twinkle below me. On the table in front of me sits a bottle of 1982 Petrus. It is the same vintage Chloe threw on me. It cost $5,000. I poured myself a glass, enjoying the deep ruby color, the way it catches the light. My phone is sitting next to the wine glass. It is a new number, a burner phone I keep for emergencies. But somehow he found it. Or maybe he just called every number he could remember until one connected. The phone vibrates against the glass table. The screen lights up. Incoming call, Federal Correctional Institution. I stare at it. I know who it is. Marcus is using his one phone call, or maybe he traded his commissary for a few minutes of connection. He is calling collect. He wants to hear my voice. He wants to beg or scream or maybe just ask why. He wants to drag me back into his orbit even for a second. I pick up the phone. I look at the notification. Will you accept the charges? The automated voice would ask if I answered. I smile. It is a genuine smile, a smile that reaches my eyes. No, I whisper to the empty room. I will not accept the charges. I have paid enough. I press the side button, silencing the call. The screen goes dark. I pop the back of the phone open and slide out the SIM card. It is a tiny piece of plastic, a little chip that connects me to a past I have outgrown. I look at the glass of wine. The liquid is dark and rich like blood, like memory. I drop the SIM card into the wine. It sinks to the bottom, sending up a few tiny red bubbles. It is ruined now. The contacts, the history, the connection to Marcus. It is all drowned in $5,000 grape juice. I stand up and walk to the window. I raise the glass in a toast to the city, to the night, to myself. To freedom, I say. I take a sip. It tastes like victory. This story is a powerful reminder that true strength often moves in silence. While the Brooks family built their empire on arrogance, appearances, and the humiliation of others, Nia built hers on resilience and strategic preparation. It teaches us that your worth is never defined by how others treat you, nor by the price tag of your clothes. When people underestimate you, don't waste energy trying to correct them. Instead, let their ignorance become their downfall. The ultimate victory isn't in loud arguments, but in quietly becoming the person they never thought you could be. If you've ever had to move in silence to win a war against those who doubted you, hit that like button and share your story in the comments below.